yes. Councilman Blumetti,
Here.
Councilman Hertzberg,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Clark,
Here.
Councilwoman Quinn. Here. Mayor Chiarello.
Here, and I also want the record to show that the executive session that we had, Councilman Blumetti was present. I think he walked in right after the roll was called, so yeah. Okay, so will you please join me in saluting our flag? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Today, our municipality will recognize International Overdose Awareness Day, which I believe is the 31st of August. So I'll read the following proclamation. Whereas overdoses can occur in people who have an addiction to substances as well as those who do not, such as someone accidentally overdosing on prescription opioids after a surgery or after an injury, an elderly person consuming too much of a prescribed painkiller, a teenager experimenting with illegal drugs for the first time, or a child ingesting opioid pills or powders from a home medicine cabinet or other storage location. And whereas in as many communities throughout the country, the national opioid epidemic poses a significant threat to public health and safety in Sparta Township, overdoses related to opioids are affecting more family members, neighbors, and friends more than ever. And staff and community partners are working to address this growing crisis through various efforts. And whereas opioids are a class of highly addictive drugs used to reduce pain and include prescription opioids such as Oxycontin, hydrocodone, as well as illegal opioids like heroin. And whereas residents can help prevent overdose deaths by being aware of the signs and knowing how to respond to an overdose. And whereas the Township of Sparta will recognize International Overdose Awareness Day on August 31st to call additional attention to drug overdoses, especially involving opioids, and reduce the stigma of drug-related deaths, and therefore bring awareness to the public of opioid addiction. Now, therefore be it resolved that the Township of Sparta Township Council does hereby proclaim that August 31st is International Overdose Awareness Day, and encourages all community residents to take part in activities and observances designed to remember those we have lost, to increase awareness of drug overdoses, and to join the global effort to reduce the death toll associated with overdoses. And at this time, I'm sorry, Dana? No. Lori, come and join me, please. Lori Davina, I'm sorry. Thanks for coming out here today.
Thank you very much.
And could you say a few words about what you do?
Dan, do you want to get the mic?
Hi, my name is, right here.
You got it.
My name is Lori Davina. I work for the Center for Prevention and Counseling in Newton. I'm the outreach associate for the Recovery Community Center located on Newton Sparta Road. And every year we hold a candlelight vigil on the green in Newton on August 31st to remember those we have lost to overdose and to support their families and to help people that are still struggling out there. And that's really what this is. It's just coming together and supporting people that are going through this very rough time. It's a beautiful ceremony. We encourage you to come. We encourage you to come. And we appreciate this.
Okay.
This is a lot of heart and soul for all of us that we do at the center.
And thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing that with us. It's important. That's why we come together as a community to do these things.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lori, if I can, thank you very much. I think that this issue is kind of near and dear to me. I've lost people to overdose. And, you know, they tell you in recovery that you need to buy a black suit and have a lot of quarters because you're going to call a lot of people and go to a lot of funerals. And that's true. And, I know, right now this is near and dear. I'm involved in a case now involving Suboxone. And that's been helpful, but it's also, I know the statistics about opioid use disorder and the epidemic that we've had. And so I've been living with that for the past, few months, because I'm working with someone who's an expert in it. And it's just such grim statistics. And for you to be on the front lines of that and seeing that every day and getting up every morning, but I'm sure you also have the stories of recovery that keep you going. And I just thank you so much on behalf of the community, because there's, if you can get someone who's addicted and get them into recovery and become productive citizens, the ripple effect that has to that person's family, to the community, is just immeasurable. And it's folks like you who help that. And so you're a tremendous asset to this community, and I'm so glad and thankful that we're recognizing it, because it sure as heck deserves it. Sure.
Please do. That's okay.
I always say that, like, I have this gift. This is my new career. I originally had a career in construction. I'm a recovery specialist. I'm an outreach associate. I talk about recovery. I bring it out into the public. It's an incredible time for this movement with what we are doing, what everyone, the acceptance in the community of people wanting to hear, how can we help? Sparta Township, they invited us here tonight. You all invited us here. And it wasn't that way when I entered this world. 26 years ago, there wasn't help. You can walk alongside of people now and share your experiences. And it's a great time. It's a great time for prevention in our schools, which the Center for Prevention is in all of our schools. The recovery, counseling, it all goes together, and people in the public are big help with all this, bringing it out and making people aware that these services are available. And we have a lot of awesome events that they're open to all, because it affects us all. Friends, family, loved ones, people in recovery, people thinking about recovery.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Am I right, Chief, that y'all carry Narcan with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if anyone wanted to, I know I have friends who carry it, particularly friends who live in Philadelphia, where they've been hit pretty hard. If someone wanted to know how to use Narcan, they could see you or see the chief or see someone to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
On Sparta Road. I can bring flyers Thursday. And bring it here.
I believe we just put it on our social media too about your training, so it's on there.
I can email all this information, share our posts on social media, on your Sparta Township social media. We have it's either 10:30 or evening, I believe, at the Recovery Center, and it's open to the public.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And it is a class to show you how to use it properly.
If you also can send us that information, we could put it on the health section of our website. So we not only have a self-help section, but we also have a health watch section in addition to the social media the chief was talking about. We already have links out there to Center for Prevention, but any additional links that you have, please send them over and we'll add them. I know I'm familiar with the journey over the years in this topic. And, I think one of the things that makes us proud as a community is, to your earlier point, people didn't talk about this 20 years ago. They didn't talk about it. It was someone else's problem, or it was shoved under the rug, or it was not talked about, or if someone or a member of their family, whether it be a spouse or a child or whatever, was struggling with this, it was a very isolating event, and people felt like they really felt the stigma associated with it. So as a result of that stigma, a lot of conversations didn't happen that should have happened. A lot of lives were lost that shouldn't have been, and a lot of families and the collateral damage from the addict or the behavior of the addict, that collateral damage lasts a long time and carries a heavy impact for a long time. And I think one thing to really point out in this community that makes, our community special is the fact that we actually were the first community in Sussex County to say, you know what, we're putting together a resolution. We are putting something together about stigma-free because we understood it, and we wanted to raise awareness to the fact that we can't keep running away. We've got to run to people that need us. People need help, and they need to talk to their friends, not feel isolated from their friends, and so we really did, we try to raise awareness to that because, when people find out, when they can discuss things openly without being fearful of stigma or any kind of blowback, good things can really happen and recovery can happen. And sometimes people just need to have a conversation with someone freely, and they will get a contact or a phone number or a place or whatever. And it could change the trajectory of everyone's life. So thank you. And, like I said, if you have those links, please send them over.
I will. I just also want to say that the relationship that we have with all of our local police departments through the peer program and the competition against prosecutors. 25 years ago, that's how I was brought to the center. I saw an ad, and I was like, maybe I could do this, to work with the police departments and help people.
Mm-hmm.
It's really momentous time for the recovery movement, and it's not all roses and flowers. There's hard times, but we're going forward, and this is just, it's wonderful. It's very touching to all of us at the center. It really is. We appreciate it.
I'm glad you did that 25 years ago.
On our side for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we have no minutes to review and approve. Will the acting township manager, who happens to have a birthday today, I think 34, will please read the manager's report?
Thank you, Mayor. Parks and Recreation Department, the Sparta Recreation Program Activity Calendar for fall 2023 is available on the Township website and at the Recreation Office located underneath Sparta Library, as well as information on how to register for the programs and activities. The last Movies Under the Stars is being held this Friday, the 25th, at Dykstra Park, opening at 7 p.m. Puss in Boots and The Last Wish is being shown with no registration required and free popcorn. And also a reminder that the annual Labor Day 5K will begin at 9 a.m. on Monday, September 4th in White Deer Plaza by Crows. Road closure on East Shore Trail. County Route 613 will occur from 8 o'clock to 10:30 a.m. Now, asking Chief McCarrick to read his portion of the report, and thereafter ask Jim Zepp and Township Engineer Corey Stoner to present the council with the progress and work involving and regarding Resolution 9-2 listed on this evening's agenda. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Interim Manager Rome. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. One of the first things I was going to touch on was the Overdose Awareness Day and the relationship that we have with the Center for Prevention and CLEAR. And Deputy Mayor, you just asked about us carrying Narcan. And we do. We have been for years, and I can't even tell you how many lives our officers have saved. And if we could just tell you a quick story. About 3 weeks ago, a gentleman came in to our Records Bureau to ask for some records and some video from an incident that had occurred at his residence. He got the information that he requested, and he provided a $500 donation to our records clerk for the Sparta Police Department. And she asked a little bit about it, like, why are you donating? And he said, because there's two officers, Officer Taylor May and Officer Thomas Hurd, who saved my life. And this is going back to December 2021. And he goes, I'd really like to make this donation to the department, use it as you see fit, have a nice day, and he walked out. She gave me the information. I looked up the incident. I found the incident about, an individual who was unresponsive. Our officers arrived on scene, provided CPR, and further decided that it was possibly an overdose and provided Narcan. Obviously, the individual's alive today, so I wanted to call him and number one, thank him for stopping in, and number two, obviously thank him for his donation, which is not a necessary thing, but we do appreciate it. And when I said that, he said, "How could you put a price tag on my life?" He's like, "I'm here and I'm alive today because of your officers. They came there doing their job, not knowing what to expect when they come in there, and I'm alive today, and I just recently graduated law school. So I moved along in my life, and here I am because of these guys." So, oftentimes our officers go to these calls, these medical calls. Sometimes you're doing CPR, sometimes you're administering Narcan, sometimes you're just sitting with somebody who has a broken leg or a broken arm. But to those people, these patients, it means the world to them. Officers do that every day. Every day they're going to medical calls, some serious more than others, like I just explained, and they go on with their everyday life. And that's why I want to bring up this story and recognize those two officers for what they did and the influence that they had in this individual's life to go on and graduate law school. And that donation was used to put back into our community to provide a junior police academy. So that was a thankful donation. Just a reminder, back to school is coming. I think as parents, we're all ready for it, a little structure. But with that, there's going to be more school buses on the road. There's going to be more morning traffic and afternoon traffic. We would just like to let everybody know our officers are going to be in the area during these busy times, and we're going to be highly enforcing any kind of motor vehicle violations around bus stops, schools, and whatnot. So the last thing I have, I'm very proud of as a chief and also as a township resident for over 40 years, and it's our township safety ranking. Recently, SafeWise, which is an online resource for safety information and tools, came out with their 2022 rankings of the safest municipalities in the Garden State, and for the second year in a row, Sparta Township is the #1 safest community in the state, number 7th in the nation. So although I am reporting this on behalf of the police department, we all know it takes a team to conquer something like this. And the team is built from the efforts of all our departments within our township. I could go on and name every department, but there's a lot. And, they're doing things every day to help our jobs and make our jobs easier. And also we have all the volunteers, such as our fire department, our EMS, our CERT teams, and many other volunteer organizations, along with our management, our council, and of course, our community consisting of our business owners, our schools and educators, and our residents. And so as a township, we should definitely be proud of this. And we're going to do our best to keep it going. So thank you all, and that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Chief, I just want to say thank you for your leadership. Please pass on our thank you to all the officers who go out there every day. And I mean, those are 2 years in a row. I mean, nationally ranked like that, it's unbelievable. I mean, I don't think that can be understated. It's really a job well done, and it's clear that you guys are doing a great job. And it's being recognized, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, as part of the manager's report, did you want to bring engineer and?
Yes, yeah, they can, if the chief is completed, they can step up now.
So should we approve the manager's report before we, or is this part of the manager's report?
Is this about the resolution?
Right, but we're going to talk about it as part of the manager's report. So let's approve the manager's report first, and then we can hear from the resolution. So may I have a motion to accept the manager's report as presented?
So moved?
May I have a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? All right, the manager's report is accepted, and at this time, we have, we'll do a presentation as part of the report, which is an update on the brownfield, the solar field project, as well as a short discussion of resolution 9-2 or 3. I can't remember what it was. I think it's 9-2. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Happy birthday, Sam. We're here to just a follow-up on that resolution. I know it's on the tail end of the agenda, but just a progress report on the project of the redevelopment of the solar field on the landfill. We're progressing slowly, but we are progressing. We're making headway, making adjustments. We've been attending meetings, usually about once a month. We've been, as we hit these benchmarks, and we discuss and coordinate where we move on next. Where we are at now is CEP was the awarded leasing redeveloper, and with that, they've been working on setting up the solar field, Ray. They've been doing tests out on the landfill, ensuring that everything is solid and a good basis, and just investigating if we have any other problems. To everyone's benefit, they've enlarged the field, Ray, and in your packet, you got to see the concept plan there. And it existed of two phases, two layers of solar panels, all right, each about 4.5 megawatts. So that brings it up to almost 10 megawatts, which is a considerable size system, all right? They're putting everything on, per the lease, everything on the landfill. So they're maximizing the landfill area to maximize how many panels they can put on, all right? Within maximizing it, the devices we call switchgear, which are the inverters for each phase there, have to be right adjacent to the landfill, but off of the landfill, all right? And what happens is the current lot line adjustments, the way they're laid out right now, it didn't allow enough space for the switchgear. Fortunately, we have a good neighbor under East Coast Development, and explain that situation with them. They're all about, one, the primary goal of closing the landfill, and two, actually getting the solar field built for all the benefits that it has. With that, would require a subdivision or a lot line adjustment, we're calling it. And with that, we're just making that adjustment. Unfortunately, it's just a swap of land. And the resolution there is your guys' approval on the submission. That is pending. Well, I'm going to hand it off to Corey here on a few things that have to happen for it to really take effect. So I'll hand that over to Corey here.
Sure. What Jim has stated about it really comes down to the switching gear where location cannot be located on top of the landfill property. I think it has to do with the foundations and everything with the gear itself has to be of a native material. So in order to do that and that's where they're looking at the neighboring property, for some additional land. To do that though, the neighbor east, they go by East Coast Development Associates. I know the property owner's name better than the corporation name, but they have to come up with a minor sub. They're gonna make an application to your planning board for a minor subdivision. In order to do that, they would be the applicant. However, you're one of the owners. So the application will include the deeding of. It comes out of 0.587 acres, about 0.6 of an acre of land that would come from East Coast and be dedicated back, as part of the subdivision, it would merge into the township property. In exchange, there's land up near Price's Lane and an old a right-of-way that was at one point formed for a future development that East Coast was going to move forward with development at that time. That development approvals had expired, so right now it's going to be a transfer of land, pretty evenly transfer of land. But the land in the back of the property where the landfill and the solar panels would be, they would be dedicated to the town, and then the town would vacate the rights to the area up near Price's Lane. So it's basically it's a land swap, but they need your approval to make the application. Just a few things. Resolution, I think it's 9-2.
There's two.
9-2.
Yep.
a few things come with that. You know, the town would vacate it was called Sustainable Way at that time. That's the right of way that would go into the neighbor's property. They'll then, you know, dedicate an area, you know, to the township. This also would, when the subdivision occurs, there's a boundary between the ED and the OSGU zones, the boundary lines. So this would be, you know, the approval of the council to, you know, for the township to proceed in making sure that the zone lines follow the property lines. Because right now, the zone lines are where they are. You move the property lines, you like the zone boundaries to match, okay? And the only other thing they had is the back of the property, you know, with the land swap, they asked for a drainage easement on the back of our landfill property. When they had their original site plan, some down through the road, down the road sometime, they had a discharge of water that the property drains there anyways. They just want to formalize the drainage easement at that time when they come in here with this subdivision.
If I remember correctly, that was something that had been done a long time ago with the town, but it was never formalized. Is that correct?
Which part?
Drainage in the back one.
I wasn't aware of that, but if that's the
No,
case. yeah.
you're right.
This would, when they do this, the formalize the minor subdivision and the new description of land, that would be formalized. Once they get through the planning board process of doing the minor subdivision, it's my understanding is that then they'll look at coming in for the board approvals for the solar facility, the solar farm itself. The one thing Jim has stated this is going to be on top of the closed landfill, and they're still going through the process of closing the landfill, and a little bit has to do with some wetland permits that were required. Eco Science is still trying to get the permits to close, to finish that. Once they get the environmental permits in place, then they can close the landfill, then they can proceed with the construction of their solar facility. But that facility does have to come in front of the board for approval because it's going to be a privately owned facility. So that's part of the redevelopment plan and the redeveloper. So that'll be the next steps. But tonight's resolution is only for, so that the mayor and council to consent to the application itself. The residual parts that are related to that.
Thank you. Any questions from the dais?
Yeah, I have some questions. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. First, let me, I guess, high level. So, and maybe Sam or Tom, you can help me. Can you just help me understand why this is coming to the council for approval as a resolution first, instead of going first to the planning board, which ultimately will make a decision on it as well?
We're just making a commitment, you would be making a commitment that you would be in support of their application to the land use board. And we'd be committing to indeed doing the swap.
And
Okay.
Have
the
you ever
other
seen
part
that
of that
Doesn't mean
too
that they're
is,
going to approve it, but ultimately it'd be within.
The
their-
application for the planning board always has, you know, if you ever see an application, it'll have the applicant's name and they'll have the owner's name, you know, so they cannot make a formal application and you
Without
know,
our
using your
additional
land
approval.
without your consent.
Okay.
That's as simple as.
and obviously too, what the part of it is, there is a monetary part to this resolution. And it's basically, the funding is not technically in place to do the subdivision. So this gives the funding in order to be able to pay the professionals to go out and the engineers to actually do the subdivision and work it through the system.
So I noticed on the maps, specifically the Dykstra map schematic, that in the upper right, that lot 5, which on the bottom it shows block 12,001, lot 5. Above it though, closer to Price's Lane, it has 3 proposed subdivisions or sublots, lot A, B, and C. I'm curious, does this resolution and do the actions that are planned have anything to do with subdividing that piece of land, that block 5, lot 5? On here, it seems like they're proposing subdivisions of A, B, and C.
This resolution has nothing to do with those lots.
Okay.
It just has to do with from lot 4 into lot 5 prior to that subdivision of lot B and lot C, you know, that forming 3 individual lots. I'm not familiar if those 3 lots are part of the application that come to the board or not, truthfully. I think they have multiple buildings up there and that they might be trying to clear that up, but the main lot A is the remainder lot that they have, which is the vacant piece of land.
Okay. So I guess what I'm hearing is tonight's conversation, this resolution, the plans, as far as you both know, have no bearing on that ABC subdivision. That's just coincidentally on this schematic. Okay. So next, sustainable way. I saw that pop up, and it looks, looking at the maps pretty carefully, I could be off, it looks like it's 50 feet wide by, as best I can tell on the map, it looks like 475 feet long. So it's it's a little decent chunk of right of way, I think one of you said, Jim, maybe. So maybe Sam and Tom, you can help too. But so what is that when was it established? What's its purpose? Is it a conservation easement? Does it have certain protections? It's currently undeveloped, I get that, but what's the downside of us transitioning this? It seems like we're using it up, and I'll get to that in a minute with the math, but.
It's my understanding that Sustainable Way was part of you see that Lot 5, Lot A, proposed Lot A area, that was a part of a development where they were going to subdivide that and create, I don't know if it was a business park or some other development at one point. So Sustainable Way was created in support of that. Right now, it's going to be vacated, and that whole Sustainable Way is going to go away. So if you see that hatch pattern, the hatch pattern on the Lot 5 side of the property line it's just going to be merged right into, that property.
So is it a paper road?
Yes, it was a paper road. Yeah.
Okay, so there's no easements, conservation easements, there's no differentiation in the type of property or the rules surrounding it?
Now, at one point, there was a right-of-way decided, determined, dedicated, for that use. That's going to go away. It's going to be vacated, and it's going to be absorbed back into the town's, the DPW garage land, and then the Lot 4 property. It's just going to be absorbed in that, and you will not see those lines anymore on any maps, tax maps, or anything of that nature. They'll go away.
Okay, when you look at Lot 4 and Lot 5, and you look at again, at the Dykstra map, it has all the math showing what it is now, what's being added, what's being taken away. So Block 5 winds up net zero, right? They're getting some of the Sustainable Way, they're getting a little part of Lot 4, and they're giving up part of Lot 4. So they net out to zero. When you look at Lot 4, the township property, again, it's getting a little piece of that Sustainable Way. It's giving land to 5, and it's taking land back from 5. But there's a net increase of 7/10 of an acre.
I know what he's talking about there. What happens is, you're right, with the Sustainable Way was part of the swap. And as you come down in the middle of the lot, where you see a portion of Block 1201, Lot 4 to be annexed and all that, right in the middle of the lot, right there, we're actually ceding a little more of the town property over to Lot 5 in compensation for the land swap. I have to admit, when we originally were discussing this, I didn't want to give any road frontage up, so I suggested that we give them more property in the middle of the lot, which was still usable. And they were amicable to that, and it worked out that way. And that it's not as obvious here, but that's where they're gaining a little more property from the original lot line, the original property lines.
Okay, so that 0.7 acres, that right away will disappear, of course, when this is done.
Right.
And it's being divided up, the township's getting.
It really does work out well to our favor. So I was pretty happy with it.
Okay. So I appreciate that, it helps. Next questions I have are really bigger picture questions, and honestly, some concerns around where this landfill is and some of the environmental constraints that are right touching it almost, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you look at the other schematic, the one from Collier's, it's hard to see even in color, but I did mark mine up pretty carefully. There is, to the left of the solar array, which is maybe 33 acres, I think the field is approximately. To the left of it, that's almost all wetlands, and also coming in from the top left and going down the left side of that solar field is also a tributary to the Paulinskill. Around that tributary, as you probably know, is a 150-foot riparian buffer, which cuts into the left corner, or the left side, and right across the center of the solar field, about a third of the way up from the bottom. Also, along the bottom, coming under the solar field from the left, lower left margin under the wetlands, going all along there, as you could probably see on there, is the Sparta Junction Brook. Also, there's a buffer, riparian buffer around there. And around the wetlands, there's a 150-foot buffer. On the right side, the right section of the solar array field is also a wetlands. It's like a banana shape, but it's a pretty large wetlands that looks like the solar field is right on top of it.
That's what's holding it up.
Okay, so, and that has a 150-foot buffer. So I wish I could blow this up on a screen. When you look at it, you have the two carvings from the side, the carving on the bottom. It appears to me, just eyeballing it, 30 to 40% of this solar field is, or more, maybe 30 to 40, is within areas that you would not expect it to be able to be built in, right? You have wetlands buffer, you have riparian buffers from both sides and from the bottom coming up. So I guess my big question is, where are we with NJDEP? And by that, I mean, I know they're involved in the capping. I know they're involved in the remediation. How closely have they been involved with the wetlands and the streams? If you also look at an environmental resource inventory for this property, which I ran today, it's a critical wildlife area, including the wood turtle and the bog turtle. I'm sure you're both familiar with that. I see Jim smiling. It's almost 50% riparian area.
It's beautiful.
I don't want to go on through the whole list of things
I
here,
gotta
but
get you back there, Dean.
yeah,
It is beautiful back there with all that. You covered a whole lot
yeah.
when it comes.
That's
to
why I'm
what you're talking
concerned.
about. This is, and as you all know, this goes way back when we first, right in the middle of all that is a landfill, all right? The township want to do the right thing, cap this landfill and close it properly. There's 12, 15 some odd monitoring wells on the perimeter. We still monitor, we still do all that good stuff. We've capped 90% of it, except for that banana-shaped part of the on the right side,
Yeah.
of the east side. And that's the one that's holding us up. Everything else is capped, and we've gotten approvals on, and we're doing well on that. It's also the reason why the solar panels are only on the landfill, nowhere else. That's key. That's actually the whole reason we're here doing this adjustment, because we're not going off the landfill. Some of the area, that tributary you're talking about on the east side, was argued that it doesn't exist anymore, and it was actually a man-made canal back in the day when this was farmland, that the farmer had actually created for water diversion on parts of it. Laura Newgard, our environmental scientist that we've hired, has done an immense amount of research, and I went with her, and she puts her boots on, and she's going through documenting everything. Everything's well documented. The DEP is very familiar with this. As I've said before, the big changes is the DEP has changed personnel. And we got all new people now freshly looking at the whole thing, where we're just trying to do the right thing and close this landfill. I think everything, the DEP is on top of this. Where we're at right now is that the CEP Renewables is moving ahead as fast as they can to get the solar project all set and ready to go in anticipation for the approval to mitigate that property. We've got a couple of options on the table, and right now we're trying to get the ear of the DEP to listen to our submission. We've done a GP5 again, which is a permit which would allow us to close this, and we've basically illuminated them to all the efforts that we've done. Sparta's done an incredible amount of efforts in trying to find mitigating property that was accepted. We've gotten shot down several times. They were asking for funding for mitigated property, which was just not reasonable. And it's a landfill.
Jim, just, I want to make sure that I'm remembering this correctly. This was, the encroachment of the landfill on some of these protected properties, whenever that was, 70s, 80s, that was done, right? Part of this deal that we made was that they would be responsible for the mitigation or for whatever penalties there are, right? They're going to absorb that in this project.
Right.
Otherwise, the taxpayers are going to have to absorb that.
Right, well, this is a double beneficial project. One is you got the great solar field going on, but the goal being to close the landfill.
Right.
CEP does have influence that can assist us in closing this landfill, and I believe, I wasn't involved with Bernanke and his consulting on this, but I believe one of the strong suits was that they had a very good chance in helping the town get the approvals from DEP to close this landfill. And we're going to be celebrating when we get that.
Right.
It's just, right now, the time is ripe right now to do it. I think it'll happen. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
And am I right that there are no areas where the solar panels are now that there used to be there used to be a landfill there? Meaning the solar panels aren't taking up space that the landfill didn't take up whenever there was a landfill, right? So we're just simply, we've taken a landfill and we're putting solar panels over it, as opposed to there's other things you can do to cap a landfill. You know, you don't have to tell me what those are, but the encroachment that we have existed with the existing landfill, right? The closest to the riparian buffer, the closest to the wetlands. The only difference now is instead of a landfill, we have solar panels.
That's a
Right.
big difference.
On top of the landfill,
Yeah,
right.
And it's not an encroachment. The buffer areas and the wetlands and the streams are, I mean, the solar field is on top of a lot of that. So, I mean, it's not our only choice. And I'm all for solar energy and I'm all for closing the landfill. I'm not for doing long-term damage. And just because a landfill was there for the last 30 years, 35, 25, I forget, 80s, whenever it started, doesn't mean we have to put something else there if it's a big if it's going to cause longer-term damage. I'm not comparing it to, is it better than having an uncapped landfill? No, of course it's better than that. It could also be a field. It could also be a park. It could also be something else that doesn't have 33 acres of solar field. Do we know what the impact of that is? Is that considered impervious surface? To a degree, I don't know.
It's not considered.
Okay.
I've actually heard a lot of regenerative farms putting them on so that certain animals have shade and can use those solar panels on their farm, you know, in a beneficial way. I mean, and we could talk about, you know, the 150 different things we could do, but that ship has sailed. We've already signed contracts.
Well, if it doesn't pass NJDEP, then the ship comes back.
But that's-
Right, I mean, essentially.
Sure.
That's going
Yeah.
through environmental permitting, there's two parts of environmental permitting. You know, I think, she commented on the fact that about the wetland mitigation and the permit, I'm sorry about that, Mayor. You commented about the permit and the mitigation occurring. That's one part of the aspect of the environmental permits in front of the DEP right now, but also the general permit for the redevelopment of an area inside the riparian buffer. Okay, so they're captive. They're redeveloping an area that's already been impacted and adjusted. It's not native material, so native land. So I think that's part of the application that's in front of them right now. If they don't get that permit, then they cannot build what they have proposed. So that's part of the DEP application.
Do we have any sense of timing or how it's going? I know you said there's some transitions,
I
but
think they're a little frustrated at how much time it has taken. I think that's why they are actually, I think they wanted to have that in hand now, but I think what they may proceed with an application in front of the municipal boards to move the application ahead, and it'd be conditioned on the DEP approval. If the DEP approval modifies it, they may be back to the board with amended site plan, but I think they're trying to move forward with it because they're kind of stuck at the DEP level right now.
yeah.
And there's been, I don't think, any sign of how soon it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the conversation any board's going to have, whether it's planning board, environmental, or any citizen, is going to be, do we have an answer on whether this is going to be approved, and are there ramifications of going forward with this?
Understood.
They've invested a lot of money already in the project, so it's in their interest to move this along. I think they have the best advantages, as opposed to if we didn't do solar, we didn't open property like we were. I don't think we had much of a chance of closing this unless we shelled out a lot of money and paid a mitigation bank. And where's the motive in that? With this solar thing, at $45,000 a megawatt, you stand to earn close to $450,000 a year in your lease for 30 years.
I think the important thing to remember also is the entire preface behind this redevelopment was this agreement that we could get into to earn the township money from it, to also be able to get a company to come in here as part of that agreement and cap and clean it up. Because honestly, the best thing for the environment back there was to get that cleaned up. We all agreed to that. As part of that agreement that we entered into, the solar panels were there. So, I mean, this is all part and parcel of the job. And I think we all understand the significance and the importance of getting that capped and filled as soon as possible. So
Well,
we want
I
to
mean,
support that and get that
you're-
through.
You're capping, you're fixing an environmental issue,
Yeah.
at no cost to the taxpayer. You're putting the liability on them to deal with the penalties and the fines from DEP for the encroachment done in the 70s, not on our taxpayer. Then you're turning it into a revenue-producing
Correct.
piece of property for the taxpayer.
And again, the history of is the original landfill was closed probably mid-80s, probably, I think, is when it was closed.
Right.
I went back through, researched the ordinances to try to get a handle on everything and where we were at. Up to the time that and I think we did so far at least 2 ordinances, each for about $1 million that we've already spent on testing and whatever else we had to do there. And that's not even scratching the surface. My guess to probably fully cap that landfill ourselves, it would be in the range of probably $4.5 to $5 million. And with the potential of going with this company, getting the solar credits, or they're actually paying us a lease to run the solar farm. The lease payments that this company will provide us is $362,000 a year. So you've taken a potential major liability and changed it into an asset.
And I think the other thing to remember is we're not in a position right now to be talking about the contract. The contract is signed. This is already going forward. We started this a long time ago. So there is no conversation right now about, is this the right choice or is it not? The decision was made, the contract is entered into. Now, my understanding is what we're talking about tonight is in order to support this, what we've already invested, over $1 million in and entered into a contract, is us supporting the land swap so that they can go to the planning board and then get that through. But the contract is already entered into. So now, my understanding is what the resolution on the agenda for this evening is simply for us to be able to say, yes, we are on board with the lot line adjustment, readjustment, and the swap, so that they can then go to the planning board and get approval from there, so that they can then go to the DEP, correct?
Yeah, I'm not arguing what the resolution's about. I read it carefully. I understand you've stated the current situation. Where I disagree, though, is there is a going back at some point if we need to. Just because we sign a contract, there are ways to get out of it. If the DEP doesn't approve this, the contract falls apart. If there are major issues with how this decision was made, or if there's major environmental damage, if a situation like that were to occur, this is not the end of the game. Just making that clear tonight.
We should talk about that when that time comes.
Yeah, well, we need to talk about it now, so at least we have an understanding where we are with DEP and that, everyone knows that
Well, I
there are
don't wanna give
concerns.
the-
Let's get to the merits of Resolution 9-2 when we go vote on that. Any other questions on the solar field status of the project and the?
Just a couple questions. So the land that the town is giving to East Coast Development, is that equal to or greater than the amount of property that we are actually receiving? Is it, when you say swap, is it, one-on-one, or, I know Dean got into that, but just, yeah.
I was looking at the way you were talking, I'm a little confused myself for a second about the numbers, okay? The numbers do work out if you look at the area that comes from that we acquire from the neighboring property is 0.587 acres, okay? The right-of-way that's vacated in sustainable way And then there's a little piece of land at the one corner of the lot, between lot 5 and lot 4. When you add them up, the land that's being acquired from lot 5, when you add back into the area of sustainable way, right away, and there's a little, right here in the little bend, right here in the little jog,
Got
there's a
you.
little piece. You add those together, it equals the large piece of land that's coming, the triangle piece of land that's coming from lot 5 to lot 4. When you look at the lot 4 property, it then looks like, our acreages goes up, because the lot 4 property is not giving up any land. It's actually the right-of-way and sustainable way, which is off of lot 4, is going over to lot 5. So when you look at the numbers, our lot is getting a little bigger because we're getting this triangular piece. Lot 5 is staying the same because what goes to the triangular piece to lot 4 is equal to what sustainable way
Yeah.
adds up.
Who owns Sustainable Way today?
The town.
Who does?
It's a right-of-way, Sparta Township right-of-way.
Okay. So,
I'm not sure about the mechanism of how they created it. They normally don't create a right-of-way ahead of time, but they must have created
Yeah.
it ahead of time and dedicated it.
so essentially,
It's a little odd.
lot 5 is going to net to 0.
Mm-hmm.
Lot 4, which is the DPW property, is gaining 0.7 acres, but not gaining because the township owns that property anyway. It's just, end of the day, it's going to be enlarged by 0.7
The
acres.
town gains 0.7 acres because there's triangular piece, but also the little bit of right-of-way left in sustainable way.
Yeah.
On the west side of that property line, they gain that. So you add those two together, we gain 7/10.
Yeah.
Their lot stays the same.
Yeah, gaining from ourselves. I mean, it's 0.7, so it's,
Correct,
the town
correct.
owns it, but yeah.
Correct.
So that lot will be bigger, the right-of-way goes away. Okay.
And I assume that, that in determining, a lot of this is driven by the need to put the transfer stations near the solar array, right?
Correct.
And that I'm sure you looked into, hey, can we do this without doing a land swap? Like, could we put it somewhere where the town already owns the property? You don't have to go through all this. And that was determined to be unfeasible?
I think the issue is if in the back of the property is where the power lines are
Yep.
located. And the landfill, for the most part, goes right up to the limits of our municipal owned land in the rear. So in order to keep the switching stations, near, the solar facility and near the power lines, that was the most logical
So
location.
transfer stations must have two conditions. One, they need to be near the solar array, and they must also be near a power line. So it's not like you can put the transfer stations up on some property 10 miles away from the solar field. If it's near a power line, that's great, but you haven't met the second condition, which is it has to be near the solar field itself. And so that's why you had to do what you had to do.
I think it's the most efficient. There might be ways you could do that. You probably have losses and different, I think for the most efficient system, I think they want to keep the two together, close.
Okay. And, what we do tonight doesn't hamstring the planning board nor the environmental department from determining if there's any environmental impacts related to the encroachment that the solar panels have.
And as Dean had said,
Yeah.
they could veto the whole project.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the one way that the contract we have with the vendor would be negated if we don't get the approvals from NJDEP.
Okay. Any other questions for Corey and Jim?
Corey and Jim, thanks for being here. and
Yeah, thank you.
answering
Very
questions.
helpful.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, excellent. At this time, I would like to open it up to the public for any items not on the agenda. And please state your name and address and speak into the mic. Thanks, Chief.
My name is Christine Dunbar. I live at 101 Wagon Wheel Road, Sparta, New Jersey, 07871. And good evening to all of you, and thank you for all that you do for our town and your dedication. So I would not be able to comment on the solar panel project, correct?
When we get to Resolution 9-2, when we get to the resolutions, you can offer a comment on that resolution.
Okay, great. Well, that's not why I'm here tonight anyway. What I'm here tonight for is to ask all of you if you've had a chance to think about and consider our speakers and the information that they presented to us from the Highlands Council and the New Jersey Land Conservancy.
I thought the speakers were well prepared, and the presentations that they left behind, as well as the recording, was informative.
Okay,
But
all right.
no concrete discussions yet on if anything is actionable.
We haven't
what we
taken
wanna do.
action on anything.
Yeah.
no.
Okay,
And,
all
and-
right.
and we could not take action from that meeting by law.
Oh, okay, so well, what is the next course of action then for the?
Maybe
don't-
someone could fill us in on what we're talking about.
Well, I'll fill you in. At one of the presentations for the Highlands Council, they went through what our preservation area was and our planning area was, and they offered quite a bit of information in terms of grants for our town, in terms of purchasing land or changing to a new town center. They also offered information regarding grants for helping us with managing our property. So that was one presentation, and there was quite a bit of information that they shared and quite a bit of money that could be offered to our town. So that was one presentation. And the other more recent was the New Jersey Land Conservancy. And what they are discussing is that it is time, we've all looked at this in Environmental Commission and also in the Planning Board, it is time to update our open space plan. And this is an organization that has done dozens, if not hundreds, of open space plans for communities within our county, within our region. And they are very objective and they are very experienced people. And I think since we're going forward now and looking at our master plan, that they would be an invaluable resource for us to invest in. And so I would like to see our town actually read and discuss a proposal that they might submit to us. I'm not sure who they would submit it to, if it would be directly to you or the planning board or to the town manager or who it would be, but this is a very important step in moving us forward in taking care of our natural resources and balancing that with our development in the future.
So my understanding with respect to the open space plan is that the ball is now in the court of the Environmental Commission, and maybe Councilman Blumetti can speak more to that than I can, but that's really between the Environmental Commission and the Planning Board, and the Environmental Commission is an advisory board to the Planning Board.
Yep. Yeah, so the Environmental Commission needs to review the materials. I know there's a lot of interest and a lot of support to pursue getting an open space plan done. Yeah, we have the one possible route and that cost. The planning board also seems supportive, and it needs to be because a master plan needs to have an open space component. So as long as those two are aligned and that this open space project or plan would fit into a master plan, we can't do it, just have it sit out there. It needs to feed into a master plan redo. So there would be support there. So the next step is the Environmental Commission really needs to decide. And I don't know, Sam, actually, if, how far the commission can go in terms of picking or selecting a partner to do this, in terms of budget, in terms of your input. Maybe you can help guide us on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the only caution I would have is the more land that you make open space land, there has to be a balance. Because the more we make open space, the more money we take off of the tax rolls. So therefore, that increases the property taxes because as the budgets go up, as the school board goes up, as the county goes up, it's all done on the, taxable land. As you cut back on the amount of taxable land that you have, obviously the pot's going to get smaller and smaller. So you have to find a good balance. Right now, we're pretty much at that balance. You got to figure the open space isn't always town-owned property. You take half of Edison Mountain is owned by the New Jersey DEP. We don't get one penny for that. However, our police department has to patrol it. The roads around it where they leave their trees grow and they fall down on the road, the road department has to go up and get the trees out of the road. So that's the type of thing of it is. It's all municipal service. We have to pay for that service, but we're not getting any money in return.
I think,
If
yeah, I
if
think,
you don't,
yeah, I would agree. I think that gets into more of that balance and the plan within the open space plan. I think just the fact that we need to do one and do an inventory of open space, that would include town-owned property, non-town-owned property. I think that needs to happen and has to go into a master plan anyway, regardless of what the advice or guidance or direction coming out of that is. I think that's your point.
there's other parts of it too, as far as municipal parts. Okay, we've got drainage easements, we've got culverts, we've got whatever we need to handle water control and stuff like that. And again, that's all property that's not on the tax rolls, and we're not getting any money back for it.
So,
Back to the question.
yeah, aside from the balance of where we wind up and what it how it gets shaped in terms of policy, the mechanics of getting it done, the budget dollars and, is that, how do you see that playing out in terms of picking a partner and getting that money in the budget to do this? And there's possible grant opportunities too, which we would probably explore first.
There's a lot of grant
Yeah.
opportunities, and the price tag on it is only $13,000 to $15,000. And I just want to clarify something. This group is not just looking at all of our lands and our natural resources and looking at places that they want us to conserve and not touch and make parks. They are making recommendations in areas also to develop, that'd be best to develop. So it's a very balanced approach that they do. And it's all based on the goals of our community, the people in this room, and what our vision is for the future. And there's constant public input through the entire process from all of the commissions and
Yeah,
the
I'm
I'm
residents.
skeptical because when the Highlands Act came in, somebody sat in Trenton and plopped it down on a map, didn't come to Sparta, didn't actually look at our community, and they put it right in the middle of downtown Sparta. And they left, all of, over the aquifer developable. So, I just am skeptical of what they do because it seemed politically driven when it was first rolled out, not community driven.
Well, you could be correct, but from what I've read, it was more geologically driven because of the limestone that's in our area. All of our area here in Sparta was created during a very specific geologic period of time, and it's limestone. And limestone is very permeable, and it doesn't have any pollution filtering capacity like other soils over in the Ridge and Valley when you get over to the Newton area. So that's how the line was drawn.
But that doesn't make sense because they cut off the sewer area, but now they allowed septics. So they could have had sewer. If these areas were so, permeable, they should have wanted a sewer service area there. So that doesn't make sense.
I don't know.
I think we're talking about different things here too. I mean, the open space
Back to
plan,
the
I mean,
open space
yeah, the policy, the eventual policy is set by our own boards, right? The planning board, the master plan, with input from the community, from council representatives, zoning. That is where the policy gets set. A nonprofit helping with an open space plan, we're not going to just take it and say, oh, okay, this is our future plan for the next whatever. It'll be, it'll have data, it'll have information, it'll be all updated. Where it goes from there is up to the planning board and the master plan.
I have to say, I'm not against a report of this type. I share skepticism, but for a different reason. I want to make sure that I'm not sold on partnering with any state agency to do it.
It's
I-
not- it's
I
not.
would feel the Highlands
It's not-
Council,
No, well, the Highlands Council is run by the state, but the open space planners, the New Jersey Land Conservancy, that is a nonprofit, and they have done Lafayette's, Vernon's, and many other township in our areas, plans for the future.
I mean, I think we need to discuss it a little bit more, Dean, before steps are taken. I think we need to ask our grant service to research options there and who we can partner with, professionals that we can partner with to get the report done. And then look at it from there. I think this is too important, especially if we're going to look at having this be in our master plan. We have professionals on staff right now that can do this for us. So I think we need to have a different conversation rather than getting involved with a nonprofit or I would feel more comfortable with that report coming out from our professionals. I'm not against the report. I think we both want the report. We have two different ideas of how to get there.
Yeah, we'll evaluate all options. I disagree, though, that our internal staff has the time or resources to do it or the experience necessarily. Partnering with a nonprofit is one avenue, doesn't mean it's the avenue. But I think they're all good points. We need to just pursue how we get the money, where the money comes from, and who would do it for us. I mean, it's a fact that we just need to update it. It hasn't been updated since 2002 or 1, or it's like 20 years old. So it needs to be updated, even if we use it just for the
And
master plan.
the other part of that, Dean, also, and the other thing I want to just clarify why I get nervous with the state is because I understand that the state has a lot of money that, they tell us is available for open space and parks and all this kind of good stuff. But I will just remind everybody that that money is not free money. It comes with a lot behind it. And you lose control of all of it. It's happened in different municipalities as well. So if you take state money for your parks or whatnot, if you remember, I'll give an example, for example, in COVID, every state park was closed, right? Stokes, all of them were closed. Our parks were open, our municipal parks were open. We obviously closed our playgrounds and whatnot, but as soon as you take money from the state, there are a lot of strings attached, and ownership is one of them. So, I think this is one thing that I just want to share as personally my concern. I'm not interested in giving Sparta property to the state of New Jersey to have them manage it. I am interested in getting an open space report so that we can make intelligent decisions amongst the boards as far as, hey, what would be great in these spaces? I am not of the opinion that the state is the best provider or partner on that initiative.
Yeah, I don't think, I would agree. I don't think we want to give up control.
we have three
I would
ordinances
just, I don't think it's not the
tonight.
state we're
Yeah,
talking about.
I've had a chance, I'll just speak for myself. This is not on behalf of the council. I think it would behoove both the planning board, the environmental commission, to take input from these very experienced constituencies or agencies. And if they didn't do that, and they present a plan to me, and they've never considered what the Highlands has recommended, nor this. To me, that would be a red flag. I think they are very experienced in this area. It doesn't mean we adopt whatever they say wholesale, but I think that the failure to even consider it, to kind of answer what you started with was, hey, what are you doing with, they came here, they spoke for 2 hours, what are you doing with this information? What I hope is that they will duly consider it, and that it will, be considered in any kind of replanning or open space plan. I think that you should take the experience of people who are devoted to this area and take that into consideration. The failure to do that, to me, is problematic. Because I also think, there's a groundswell of support in this community for, slowing the roll a little bit and trying to preserve, our quality of life, our rural character, et cetera. And so I think that doesn't mean you adopt it wholesale. It just means you should probably take into consideration these agencies and nonprofits who have a similar, or aligned with, I think, what a lot of people in Sparta would like.
Well, to be clear, there is a visioning process that involves all of the commissions and the town council from the onset. What are our objectives and what are our goals? And that's the springboard. And the nonprofit is not aligned with the state. It simply knows how to package grants and what as Councilwoman Quinn was saying, what do we need to be careful of in going forward with accepting any funding? So, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that all? Okay.
Anyone else from the public? Or any items not on the agenda?
Sure. Hi, my name is Mark Scott, 9 Pueblo Parkway. This room has been filled with people against the warehouse, against the transfer of the Wilson property. It was filled for the Environmental Commission, and it was filled for the other group. More people than there are here today. And Mrs. Dunbar was just suggesting that we investigate this. And to hear the contempt that we shouldn't, or this is wrong, or we shouldn't, we're going to turn our land over to the state. I don't think we're talking about that at all. And we don't want open space because it would take land out of the tax rolls. This land isn't exactly taxed too heavily anyways. Open space is what the people in this town want.
Yeah, but if it's open space, then we can't.
And we don't get any tax revenue. Oh my God. A couple $1,000s on 50 acres.
Balance of the residents.
Oh my God. Okay, so the people in this town have come here, these town council meetings, and said, we don't want this rural character destroyed. We want this to stay undeveloped, or at least some type of planning put into it. The old way didn't work. So I think Mrs. Dunbar is just suggesting a new way. And I want to echo what Councilman Clark just said, and Councilman Blumetti has indicated, that, we should investigate this and find out where this goes. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public on items not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, will the deputy mayor please read the expenditures for August 22?
Sure, I make a motion that we approve bill list totals by fund dated August 22nd, 2023, in the grand total amount of $13,436,384.12.
Excellent. May I have a motion to accept that expenditure?
I discussion point on one.
First, we have to second it, have it second.
We just need a second.
I'll second.
So made by Deputy Mayor Clark, seconded by Councilman Blumetti. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just have one question, and it's, I guess, more of a comment, or maybe just a question for Sam. So there is another check with 4 different pieces to it going to CP engineers. And it's, 4,000, June 4 and 5,000. I guess I'm still curious or a little concerned. I know we keep saying this is from 2022. Do we know why? And it's in August now, almost September, we're still paying
This
CP
is
engineers?
ongoing projects that they were doing for the water department.
Yeah.
At that point, they had all of the information on it. They were able to close those projects out, which I believe one of them was on the chlorinator system and stuff like that. It was necessary to retain their services because all the lake work was already done.
Mhm.
So we would have basically reduplicated the work.
What else? Do we know how long that will go on for, or other projects like this that you're aware of?
It was just a couple of with the water department. That was it. That's the only department that still retains their services.
So this might go on for a few more months, you would expect, or?
Once they close out the existing projects, I guess, that they're working on. Like I said, they're working on the chlorination system, I know that, and I believe there was a couple other projects.
Okay.
And I just had a few questions about some of the checks that we're writing. Since we talked about the landfill, there's on page 2 of the list of bills, check 127473 in the amount of $9,885. And it says encumber funds for second quarter landfill. Do we know what that is for? Yeah, Jim, I figured you'd probably know.
I'd have to look and see.
I think Jim,
That's for the mandated landfill monitoring requirements for our permit for having the landfill. And each quarter, there's so many monitoring requirements that the DEP mandates. And we have we actually bid it out to a lab company that comes in and they sample all the monitoring wells around the landfill each quarter. Some quarters, they want results from like leachate. Sometimes it's not as much, so the actual payments will change. I believe the overall cost is almost $19,000 for the year in landfill sampling. And it goes to what Sam says about, handling this landfill. But those are mandated monitoring requirements. I get the results from the labs and I have to verify everything, and then I send them down to Trenton for their records.
With those landfill monitoring costs, are those in perpetuity? Like, even if we cap it, we have a solar field, does that monitoring cost go away?
I hope so. I'll tell you that, because I have to admit, I know that Corey and I have spoke about the landfill. If and when we cap the landfill, we can always put a question into DEP and say, hey, now that we've made it this far, we're this many years out, can we at least start doing a monitoring well reduction and reduce the amount of wells that we have to sample to the point where they're satisfied and of what we've done in the capping. We're finally coming around to getting the results that they expect from an aging landfill is what it is.
And do you know what they monitor? Like, what are they actually testing for?
VOCs, all the volatile water, the leachate coming out of that landfill. That landfill had everything in it. I mean, it had the refuge, it actually had septic in it, had all sorts of materials when it was closed. And so this is just the proper method to monitoring all the perimeters. There's actually several monitoring wells, and right now I'm only required to do the 12 that they denoted. We actually had more than that out there, but it's the perimeter of keeping an eye on the landfill.
And, this is probably a DEP question, but is it, now that you're monitoring the actual release of the chemicals from the landfill, my guess is that they could do it, could you determine based upon, since you started doing the solar panels, do you know if there's any way to, hey, if you put this type of something on top of the landfill, that will improve, the leaching, et cetera, by a certain factor. Otherwise, if you use this something else on top of the landfill, it will only reduce the leaching by X percent. Did they cut it that close, do you know?
You're out of my purview on that, but I'm going to guess that it really doesn't change anything because it is an aging landfill. That landfill's 25 years old since when it was closed. I don't think that the solar panels are going to have any effect on it, other than that we finally get to close it, because you have that little bit of area of mitigated wetlands that we need to just close in. Most of the landfill's already closed. It's capped, it's clean. I mean, you're almost there. It's just that one little bit of wetland area we got to get closed, and then, you have a nice cap on it, and then they're going to put those solar panels on it. And I understand it's a ballast system, so the water's going to do what it's already doing, and it'll be a pretty natural area, as you see a lot of the solar farms out there.
Okay, thank you.
I'm hoping those monitoring goes down because it is a process to submit those results.
And while you're up here, my guess is you probably know about, there's also on page 3, there's a check for $24,995 for a storm basin. That improvements, can you just tell the public a little bit about the improvement that y'all made?
Well, it's actually an appropriate question because Corey and I just sat through a whole 4.5-hour stormwater MS4 webinar, and all the regulations, the new regulations in stormwater. Part of that regulations is that whenever you improve a roadway, you have to upgrade the catch basins in the curb of the road, all right? So you don't have floatables going down into the outfill and going to surface waters. You have to have a minimum of a 2-inch or less opening, all right? So all the new catch basins that we order, and those are cast iron basins bought off of the co-op. We use them to retrofit in all the roadways after you pave and, the roadway and you improve the roadway. It's a mandated requirement by DEP to upgrade those basins to make them stormwater compliant. And catch basins aren't cheap.
Thank you. So my guess is that y'all are right now trying to, pave new roads. And so with the paving costs, I can probably expect to see some more of these storm basin cost because that's just a function of the new stormwater management rules. Every time you improve a road, you got to improve the stormwater basin at the same time.
Exactly, and that's actually included in the capital improvement budget when Sam and I put a road improvement program together. The catch basin costs are rolled into that line. That's where, if you go to the account line, it's coming out of the capital improvement plan.
Okay.
We dedicate about 1.5 million in cash each year just to improve roads. That usually gets us pretty close to our 10 miles a year and getting all the drainage improvements done as well. And just as a reminder, what do we got, 104 miles of road in the township?
We're at 110.
110, okay. So basically I put this online that every road in the township should have been repaved within a 10-year period.
Working on it.
And then the final question was, I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse. The last one was a $49,000 expense to Wilco Air Conditioning Refrigerations for a gas line and heater install. Does anyone know what that's for?
That was probably for here, right?
That was for actually the Parks Garage. As you know, folks know, we put on that new extension on the Parks Garage in Station Park. Beautiful project. That came out really nice. I urge you to take a visit in there and see that. Part of the infrastructure is once you build that beautiful building, you got to heat it. That, I believe, and that came out of the Parks Improvement line for that garage. That cost, and that was for the installing of the heaters and the gas line work.
Okay, great, thank you.
No problem.
That's all the questions I have on the expenses.
Thank you. Any other questions on the expenses? Right, all those in favor of approving the expenses for August 22, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, our expenses are paid. At this time, we have no ordinances to be introduced. We do have 3 for a hearing. We'll start with the first one. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 23-16?
The Township of Sparta amending Chapter 11-2 Retail Food Establishment Code of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Sparta.
Thank you. This ordinance was tabled last meeting, or maybe it was 2 meetings ago. So before we can open it up, we need to bring it back to the floor. So can I have a motion to bring the ordinance back to the floor? Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Any abstain, or, I'm sorry, can I have a roll call vote to bring it back to the floor?
Councilman Blumetti,
Yes.
Councilman Hertzberg,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Councilwoman Quinn,
Yes.
Mayor Chiarello.
Yes, no, the motion, the ordinance is open to the floor. May I have, at this time, I can open it up to the public for any comment on ordinance 23-16?
Hi, Ron Day, 22 Fox Hollow Road. Just a couple of thoughts for your consideration on this one. The 2 concerns I have are mostly related to parking. First, if the vehicle is not operational, just making sure that it's kept out of public view. You know, some of these vehicles, some of these food trucks are pretty large. They have some pretty ornate signs, which makes them fun. But I don't think it's the kind of thing that we want parked like on a Monday through Friday in a visible spot so it can be used for a couple hours on a Saturday or at a party. So when I looked at the ordinance, I wasn't really sure that was coming through. I don't know if it's something you could put some words in that just says it's, you know, it's hidden from public view or not in use. So that's one. And then the second one is when it's operational. When you look at a lot of these site plans that we have for retail stores and restaurants and where these type of vehicles will be used, they're usually designed in a way, at least in my limited experience, where the number of parking spaces are just enough to get you what you need to support those uses. So a couple of times when I've seen the food trucks, what I find is that they're parking across 5 or 6 spaces. So they're basically taking up some of those spaces, which could create a traffic circulation problem. And the other thing is, you know, you're basically turning into what I'll call like a fast food type environment. And so the design of the parking lot itself may not have the proper circulation, one entrance, one exit. And then you get that combined with this taking up 4 or 5 spaces. So the concerns, I have a concern with allowing the retail food stores to use them right now. I think all the other uses, in terms of the parties, community events, that kind of stuff, I think that's great and brings a lot to the community. But just concerned with the parking, both from an operational and a non-operational perspective. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Day, just, I think the section 1110.6 of the ordinance, I think somewhat addresses that with, they're not, no mobile food vendor shall occupy street space blocking the passage of traffic. There's, all motorized must abide by all existing traffic and parking regulations. So I think also we'll have to see, on an enforcement basis, I know that if they are causing a traffic problem or hazard, I'm sure, SPD will be all over it. And I think, so I think it does, the ordinance itself does deal with that. And I think some of it, if we have to sort of tighten it because of, hey, you can only, take up this many spaces, we can address that. But I think it does try to address sort of the issues that you presented.
So the only thing that, again, if I could, is, when you look at the businesses that are coming into town and that are into town, a lot of thought, review, and discussion go into the design of those buildings, what they look like, what the signage looks like. So now, if you have food trucks that are there, you may lose some of those gains that we've gone a long way to control. So, just the concern of where they're operating is just, again, parties, community events, parks, that kind of stuff, I think that's great. But, do we want them operating in the town center? My view would be probably not, or at least not, maybe one, maybe two, I don't know how you can do that. But if all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 restaurants that show up in town center and there's food trucks there, that could really, in my mind, be a problem. And I didn't see how the visual effect was protected by any of the ordinances.
Yeah, I think, part of, the purpose of the ordinance was we still allowed for a retail food establishment to have a food truck ordinance. Now, obviously, that particular establishment, in deciding whether they want to have a food truck, is going to have to figure out whether, one, is it, put inside the economics for them, but also, do they have the space available? So, for example, if you're Asian Island, right, in the town center, and you want to put a food truck smack dab in that parking lot, you're going to have a problem, right, because it's going to impact where you're going to put it, and you're going to affect the circulation. Whereas, take Sparta Dairy, where it puts the food truck sort of on the side, and they've decided, I'm willing to cannibalize 4 parking spaces so that I can have a food truck. Now, whether all of a sudden those people who would ordinarily park in those 4 spaces now start parking in Cafe Perot and start walking across the street, thereby taking up Perot spaces. We haven't heard that complaint yet, and, I think that we haven't heard anyone from, the idea was, behind a lot of this was, one, to, obviously allow businesses that are, want to, decide it's in their economic interest to have a food truck to do it, but only those businesses that are already in the food business. What I didn't, at least speaking for me, what I didn't want to see happen is an over-proliferation of these where, someone says, you know what, I'm PNC Bank, my parking lot goes dormant from after 5 p.m., but I can get a kind of side hustle and, have a food truck come in and they kick some of the proceeds to me, thereby sort of taking sales that would otherwise go to existing businesses in White Deer Plaza. And so there was a balancing that went forth, at least in my mind, that allowed people who already have a food business to have a food truck on their property, as opposed to having it proliferate all over the town. And it also was to allow for foods in areas that I'll just call food deserts, which is, say, White Lake Field and then Station Park. Because I remember bringing this up at a rec meeting, was like, hey, these families are there for 12 hours a day watching their kid play 5 different sports, and there's no food there unless they bring a picnic.
Totally agree with that.
We get food there as opposed to building a snack shack and having to staff it.
Absolutely, totally agree. My concern was more, again, in like the town centers where parking lots are already tight, and the visual effect from the signs.
So I just want to talk to Sparta Dairy in particular.
Yeah.
Those of us that have been here long enough can remember when the football program played down at Ungerman Field, and all those businesses did well because the entire town was down there on Friday and Saturday night. Well, it's hard for Sparta Dairy with that area, unless people are going down there, unless there's a reason for people to be down there, you don't have a lot of people. So for them to have a food truck once a week to be able to bring people in and bring more customers to help them survive, I mean, I don't see the harm in that. And I was down there at the biggest event that I've seen down at that field in a long time, which was the Mush Ball Championship. And even then, their lot wasn't filled.
Right.
So I understand your concerns, but I think, I don't want to overregulate something to the point where we're hurting a guy like that who, was trying to help his business out and help sustain it. And I mean, if that means every once in a while, there's an ugly food truck in their parking lot that they own.
Yeah, and while it's operational, I'm not that concerned. So the visual effect is more when it's sitting on the side. Like, there's one new one in town that I'll mention where the truck is probably as big as the building, and sitting in a very tiny parking lot. And I can talk to you more about where that is.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things I think we got to find a way to protect against.
You're talking about the business owns the truck and it's sitting there.
Yes,
This
yes.
particular business, I know it, I've driven by, I think I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
probably.
And it's a small business that has a large, it's a
Yeah.
small business with a
The
large
truck
food truck.
barely fits in a parking lot. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what you're talking about is like, it should be, camouflaged or put somewhere
Hidden from
or
view, behind
something.
trees or shrubs or something, but,
Right.
not
So it can
something.
be on the site, but we don't need to be seeing it all the time.
Right,
Okay,
right.
so I agree with that, and I have to say also, in looking at this ordinance, outside of safety reasons and also parking, I can totally understand where you're coming from. I wouldn't go so far as to say you can't park it there, but you've got to do something with it, like you can't park it there like an advertisement.
Right.
Well, I think
get
that's a
that.
good point. You can't skirt the signage laws
Yeah.
by using a truck.
Exactly.
Right, oh, I'll
exactly.
just have a sign here and a 60-foot truck here.
Right.
So I get that. I'm looking at this ordinance, if I'm really being honest, only through public safety and only I think it's my opinion that where we add the value to this is only in our public parks, playgrounds, and it's only for public safety.
Yep.
So in other words, but I do think, obviously there are pieces of this that fall in line with, that are outside of that fall in line with public safety. The trucks can't be parked in small roads, right?
Right.
Drive through Lake Mohawk and imagine a large food truck
Right.
parked there. So that, you can have a private event, that's great, but the truck has to be on someone's property or unless the road is, but you know what I mean? Like, you cannot clog the road. We go through this with landscaping trucks now, to be quite honest with you, and it gets hazardous. I'm not gonna lie. The landscaping trucks are just as big as the food trucks at this point, maybe bigger. So my opinion of this is, when it comes to space that is open and it's public and it's township owned, I feel we should do some regulations, some basic guidelines. Nothing over the top, basically just because we should know who these people are. We should know when they're coming up. There should be ground rules. They should have to be invited. What I love, and we've talked about this a million times, you don't need snack shacks in all these places. Get some food trucks, that's great. But what we don't want is 17 food trucks randomly showing up from Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania because they found out there's a softball tournament or a football thing going on at Station Park. And next thing you know, all these people converge. So from a public safety standpoint, I do think we need to put in some ground rules, some guardrails, if you will, in those spaces. But other than the fact that, I don't want to start micromanaging this thing to be able to tell people, you can't do this, you can do this. We are seeing more local businesses and business owners with food trucks. We also want to support them in our efforts to support small business. So I see a lot in here that honestly, I don't think we can manage. So my take in looking at this is I would like to scale this back a little bit to what I feel would be manageable. And I agree, it's got to be a simple system. It's got to be simple to use. It can't be over the top. We don't have the staff or the systems to be able to micromanage a million food trucks coming and going. But I do want to see, I do want to see the guardrails in here for the public spaces. But for me, private, commercial, anything that is owned, I don't want to get involved with that. I don't think it's I think it's overreach for us to try, other than the public safety guidelines. Don't park it in the road, make sure we can't see it or screen it or put it somewhere where you're not using it for another sign, other than those things.
Is anything else?
No, thank
No,
you.
Thank you. If I may, there's going to be a lively discussion on this. I fully expect us to mark this up a little bit. And this could get hairy if we don't provide some structure. So what I'd like to do is, once we bring this to the dais, to just take each use case one by one. Let's work it and make some suggestions and work it through and get it, rather than go into all different directions and forget where we started from. So let's finish the public discussion. And then my suggestion would be to take this, let's look at events, let's look at the parked in the public lot, let's look at the parking in the private lot, and then just work out those issues one by one. I think that's the best way to get through the material in the time that we have.
Good idea.
And so please state your name and address for the
Jenny
record.
Derrick's Tap into Sparta. I have just a couple of questions. Most of them, to your point, Chris, is there a limit to the number of permits allowed in a number in one spot? So will White Lake be able, will 17 trucks just show up? I mean, I understand they have to apply, but there's nothing in here that, in the ordinance, that says 17 trucks couldn't apply to go to White Lake. You mentioned they have to be invited. There's no mechanism in here to say that they have to be invited. They have to show proof that the owner acknowledges that they're going to be there, or the event organizer acknowledges they're going to be there, but there's no indication that they have to be invited. I don't know how you would
Well, if it's an
how you would
event,
stipulate that.
the event holder has to invite them.
Right, but if you're talking about
Just Sunday.
softball fields or baseball games, and somebody knows there's going to be a captured audience down there, to the point there's no other food.
Yeah, I would just direct your attention to 11-10.5D, and it actually dumps it in the lap of the township manager, where it provides that the township manager may set a limit on the number of mobile food vendors who may operate in the location at the same time. Also, the designated areas of operation within those parks will be determined by the township manager or designee. And that pertains to the public locations. And the public locations are actually limited as well.
I understand. That makes it somewhat, or not somewhat, it makes it very subjective.
I think you have to have a subjective, because you might have a food truck event where you want 17 trucks.
Right.
Or you might have something else that's smaller in the same area that you want less. So I think you have to have a subjective based on what the criteria.
Well, then maybe there could be some carve out for a specific event or something like that. I'm just suggesting that there's no language other than putting it onto the township manager to decide.
I can tell you that we had feedback from the dais on both setting a total limit for a number of food trucks that can operate in town and not setting one. And I fully expect us to discuss that in a moment and settle on something. But right now, you're right, the way that's written right now is there is no upper limit that's defined in the ordinance. And that's something that I'm welcome to have a conversation about.
So that falls in line also, Jenny, with those guidelines that I'm talking about.
Right.
At least in public spaces. I want to see those guidelines, something like, and again, I understand from, Josh is exactly right. There was just an event in Station Park where it was a food truck festival. So why would you limit that to 2 food trucks? That makes no sense. But at the same token, if you have softball that's having an event at, I don't know, let's just use Station Park. And then you have football at the same time. This one's having 2 food trucks. This one's having 3. Like, you know what I mean? I do think there needs to be subjectivity, but also guardrails. Like where these things go, and making sure that at these fields, the window is in a certain space so that kids aren't lining up in the street or people aren't lining up in the street to get food, things like that.
I mean, honestly, I think just capitalism is going to dictate that. Because if you have 15 food trucks at one game, nobody's going to make any money. Those food trucks aren't going to put themselves in that situation.
You're not going to be able to park either. The limit, and the other question I had was, is there going to be a limit of number of permits, maybe on a consecutive basis, that, you can't get 52 weeks worth of food truck or approvals? Is there going to be some type of a limit for that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Warner from Hillside Road. Just a reminder to the council, and I'm sure the chief can vouch for this, as far as where the vehicles are parked, there already is a town ordinance that RVs, boats, and commercial vehicles, and all these trucks are commercial vehicles, must be parked behind the front line of the property of the occupancy and hidden from view. So it's already covered in a town ordinance.
I was actually going to mention that, but thank you for doing that.
And some of those big trucks, I'd like to see them hide them.
Thank you for offering that.
And that's a very good point, because this proposed ordinance is subject to the existing ordinances of the township.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none. I think what I should have done was to make a motion to adopt it and have a second before we have any discussion, so I'll do that now. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance 23-16?
I mean, I do have an amendment, but
There'll be amendments after we
Okay.
have a second, because it's not brought to the floor unless it's adopted and seconded. We haven't voted yet to approve it. So is there a motion to adopt ordinance 23-16?
Yep, I'll make a motion to adopt 2316.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any comments or discussion on it? I'll start with Councilwoman Quinn.
Mary, do you want to start with one of the use cases?
Oh, yeah, I violated my own rule. So let's do this, and let's see if it works out or not. I think we take this one by one and adjudicate it. That might be the easiest way to do this. So let's start with parked on a private property for a private event. And I think with the way the ordinance is written right now is this is not subject to no regulation. Anyone have any comments to offer on that?
Now, having said that, there's no regulation by Sparta Township. They are still subject to
Good point.
Right.
regulation by the Sussex County Department of Health, the Division of Tax, but we would not be enforcing any of those regulations.
Thank you. Second use case would be.
Wait a minute, whoa.
Sure, I'm sorry.
Let's go back up.
Sorry.
But still, public safety rules and everything apply. So even though, just to be clear.
Our
Say whatever
existing
rules exist,
ordinances
exist.
are.
And I can't hear, all right, okay, perfect.
Yeah, this ordinance doesn't, doesn't prevent the, application of already existing rules, right? If you have a private event and you park the food truck, in the middle of the street, and say, and you have all these people and you're blocking the traffic, I think that our SPD is going to have something to say about that, and you're not going to be able to have that food truck there. So it's still, it doesn't exclude you from having to abide by the existing rules and regulations.
It falls under the Title 39 violations.
Yep. And that truck has to be licensed and inspected. And,
My only issue with this at all is making sure that the window is on the grass side and not in the street. I almost saw a child, when I was playing softball, running across the street to the Good Humor truck that used to go years and years ago to the Mohawk Avenue school field during softball, women's softball. And the child ran out between two parked cars to get to the window, which was facing the street. If the window was the other way, do you know what I'm saying? The child wouldn't have had to do that. So I get that it's things that maybe people don't think about, but to me, when you almost watch it, it's terrifying. So, you're supposed to learn from your life experience. That's my only thing about that. I get it, it's all the different things, but just to be mindful, they need to just park these things so that they make sense from a safety perspective as well. That's,
And there is a provision under 11-10.6.
I was looking for that
If
right
the
now.
mobile food vendor is legally parked on a public road, the concession window must face away from the public road.
perfect. Okay, well, then that solves that.
Well, that doesn't take, well, that doesn't
next
take
use
care of your
case.
example though, right? Where it's parked on private property, but the window is still facing the street.
No, he says that says it can't face the street.
No, that says
Well,
if it's
that's
parked
if
in the
it's-
street, it can't face the street. You're saying if it's parked on private property, it shouldn't face the street. That's two different things, right? Yeah, so in other words, your suggestion
get
is if
it.
it parked on private property, the queue should be on private property, right? The window should be on private property. You shouldn't have a kid running out to the street side from the private property, right?
Yeah, I think it's hard to regulate at
I
the,
was going to say.
That's,
At that
okay, so
level,
maybe I'm just
because-
reading
yeah.
too much into it. It's
Yeah.
just that one thing sticks in my head.
parked on the street is the thing, yeah.
I mean, if
Yeah, okay.
That's where the safety
Yeah.
problems are going to come in on the street. All right, excellent. The next use case would be a public event. And we sort of separated this into, if you can park on for a public event, like the thing that occurs to me right now is the concert, Friday concerts, parked on a private property or parked in public property. For each of those cases, right now, the way it's written, that the food truck would have to have permission from the township, so you'd have to register with the town that, yes, I'm at this event, and the event holder would also have to say, yes, I approve this food truck being here. So now we have a record of that food truck there, and that the event holder's not ambushed or surprised by having trucks there that person wasn't expecting, and can also govern the number of trucks as well. And then the only difference between parked in a private event or public event, if there's a public event, and the way that the thinking was at the time was that it might be better safety-wise if there's a private lot, that someone's okay for having a truck at a private lot to be parked there for this public event, that would be okay, subject to the property owner being approval. So that said, any comments on trucks operating for a public event?
So I'm just gonna,
And if that's confusing, I understand.
no, I think it's fine.
Okay.
My issue is with how the permitting process is gonna work. And I think if we're gonna do this, we have to have an online permitting process. We have to have different pricing for the permits, because if you know, a nonprofit in town is having an event, they're calling a food truck to come in because they want them, you know, this event serviced, and we're making them do, you know, what could be a yearly permit at that fee. You know, either the nonprofit's gonna absorb that cost, or the truck's just gonna say, no, I'm not doing that. So I think we need an online process, and there has to be different fees for different kinds of permits, and I think it has to be reasonable that we make it easy enough where no trucks are gonna come here to service, you know, these groups that might want them. Sport programs, whatever.
What was the fee that we had in here right now? I don't recall there being a fee.
I don't think, yeah, I don't.
I think it's defined in
There
the
is.
Class 4 license
But there's only
ordinance
one.
currently in the code. I don't know what the fee
It's
is.
currently in the code.
Approximately, I recall.
So right now, and I don't see the fee in here. Actually, Roxanne, did you processed a couple of these? Do you recall what? I don't want to put you on the spot, I'm sorry. Anyway, so the point is, whatever the fee is, $1.
Yeah, if you take a look at 11-10.3A, it simply essentially directs you to the Class 4 license fee as defined in 11-2.4C, and you get that through the Township Clerk's office.
Understood. So what Councilman Hertzberg is saying, that having a fee for a single day event should be materially different than having a fee for being able to service White Lake Field for the whole year.
Right.
And that
And there should be a quick, easy online process that they can just go online, put in for it, pay, and then, you know, get an approval.
Yeah, the getting it online, the operation of it, that's certainly one thing. I don't think that would belong in an ordinance, but that would be an administration piece of it. Unless we want to put that in the ordinance that it must be online, in which case we wouldn't be able to do this until the online structure was put into place.
I think this is gonna, you know, negatively affect the ability for these people to do this without that happening.
But right now, we have a fee structure in place, as we just referred to. It refers to section 11, paragraph 11-2.4. So there is a fee structure in place. We don't know what it is at this time. But so one thing is that we want to make it sure it's fair, that a single day's event is different than a whole year. If both are de minimis, then it really probably doesn't matter. I mean, if the fee is $10, then it probably doesn't matter if it's for a whole year or an event.
And also, do we want to do a whole year? What's the maximum time we want to do? Do we want to do it?
Well, I would think so, yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just say also, if we're supporting local business, then my take would be if we have a local business, which we have a couple now, a local business that is in Sparta that has its own food truck, why should they pay additional for a license to serve food in Sparta? So we should be supporting small business owners. And, you know, we have residents in town that have food trucks. You know, we have, so I'm just saying, like, if
So I think that's a good point. I think maybe we should waive the permit for Sparta-owned businesses.
Yeah, for Sparta-owned, for businesses that are Sparta-owned or whatever. I mean, why would local businesses that are already restaurants that now decide to expand their business by having a food truck, why should they pay?
Well, we charge fees
Service
because it
us.
costs us for the
Processing.
the
It's a discount,
maintenance
so we
and
offer 'em a
and,
discount.
code enforcement and all
But
the.
do they even need to get a license? They're already here. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, they don't need a license. They're licensed at the county level by the county health department.
Right.
So we're not going to issue them a license. What we're going to do is issue them a permit to say, yes, you can operate in in Sparta. We know that you're here, and you're allowed to be here, and you're not allowed to operate in Sparta. And now we're talking about you're allowed to operate at a specific event or, in these two public areas that we haven't talked about yet.
This is where I'm coming from. I think the only time we give a permit is to tell people, you are welcome to come onto our public space. Don't even get involved with the rest of it. So in other words, if you get a permit, that means you are cleared and invited. If someone invites you to go to an event on Sparta Township public property we own, you're approved. And if you don't have that, you can't go on that property, period, because we don't know who you are, we don't know where you're coming from. So I guess this is where I'm looking at it differently. I think that from a public safety perspective, we should only be worried about, when it comes to permitting and whatnot, dealing with what is going to be on our property with our public there, not every truck that comes to Sparta.
I would also add, though, what about the situation where it's on private property, but it's still serving the public?
But that's
We haven't
on
gotten
them.
to that yet.
That's on the restaurant. Why do we
Yeah.
want to
Let's-
insert
let's-
ourselves?
let's not talk about that yet.
I think there's probably a reason there to do that, to
That's,
protect
we're
the
not inviting
community.
them, that's not on us. That's what I'm saying. We're
But
not
they're
inviting-
serving our residents. I mean, they're serving.
Let's talk about that use case later. So
Food truck
we're at an event, it's a softball tournament or it's the concert series.
Okay.
And we want to know that that food truck is operating there and that the event holder knows that the food truck is operating there. The event owner can govern, yes, I invited this food truck. I know you just showed up, get out, because I invited the food truck that's in back of you. That's the one I wanted at this event, not you. You just showed up. That's why we thought it would be,
Schools are public property now.
schools would be public property, correct?
That's public property.
But it's a
So that
private
falls
event,
under
or it's
Parks.
it's a public
parks,
event.
Playgrounds, facilities, schools, that's all public property.
But we have a softball tournament, let's say it's at Dykstra Park, and a food truck shows up, but the event holder only wanted 2 food trucks because I didn't want to overrun the place with food trucks. I chose food truck A and B, and food truck C pulls up because I heard there's an event. I just want
So
to,
C should be told to leave. It's public or private. It's public property.
so how does C know that?
Because we have that's why I'm saying we need to, in my opinion, we focus in these areas where it's public space, and then we set some guardrails. You have to be invited. If C shows up and they're not invited,
Right, and
Bye.
that's the point of having the event holder sign off that says, yes, I approve these 2 trucks to be here, so that when the
Right.
code enforcement comes and says, get food truck C out of here, they can, look, this is what I've approved.
that should also be online, though, that could be
Could be
online.
online, yes.
Just so you know, the Class 4 license is $75. If you look on our website,
Yeah.
under licenses and fees, and they list, and then you go to retail food licensing, Class 4 is mobile food and drinks, $75.
Okay, and would be either for an event or for the whole year, it's indiscriminate. It doesn't go into that, it just says $75.
Yeah.
I think there would be a separate ordinance discussion to separate that fee if we want to bifurcate that to a smaller fee for a single event. I think that's outside the scope of this discussion because it refers to something that's not in this ordinance.
It should be. I mean, if, you don't create another ordinance. Oh, you're saying because fees are covered in a different ordinance. is what you're
Correct.
saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, but I wouldn't be okay with this without that being included.
Yeah, just to be clear, I mean, this ordinance prescribes that.
Oh, it
that
prescribes something else, I
so
guess
it would
you're
be
saying.
$75
We would have to update.
under the
fee
current
schedule,
language.
right?
Yep.
We could update the fee schedule to say, 1 day permit, 1 week permit, 1 month permit, 1 year permit, whatever it is.
I would just make it, my own opinion would 2, just as, per event or per year. But then if it's 2 events, is it twice the cost? Is it 3 events? You charge If it's $10, do you have $30 for 3 events?
I don't know, I mean, one downside of prescribing it in this ordinance is that if we want to change the fees, it's easier to adjust a fee schedule than redo an ordinance.
Here's the other problem. If a food truck has already come to something in a public space in a park, let's say, and then the following week, somebody's supposed to open the snack shack and they can't, and they're like, oh my gosh, let me call that food truck and see if they can come, right? Then it's like, oh, whoops, you only had a permit for a day. Now you got to like frantically go online. And what if it's Friday? What if someone canceled right away when it's Friday and you don't have the thing?
Oh, that's a good point.
You know what I'm saying? Like, people will be scrambling, the clerk will be flipping out. I mean, the work's gonna come in. That's why I'm just trying to be mindful of whatever we're
That's a
putting,
good point.
whatever we're putting into these processes, we have to look at the back end and make sure that we can manage it.
You can get really cute and you can just create headaches for yourself.
That's
And
what
I
I'm,
knew we would have this discussion. I knew this was going to be like, this is going to be so
and I
airy.
think
But I
that's
think
fine.
it's helpful, though, I mean, if you actually read the ordinance, though, so for example, the mobile food truck vendor locations, it says that part of the license, they have to specify when they're going to be there. So, if you're a food truck vendor and you're like, I want to be at White Station Park, when you apply for that license, you have to designate when you want to be at Station Park. And you factor that in, and, having just talked to some of these mobile food truck vendors, it's not like they wake up on Saturday and like, where do I want to go today? They are booked, like, I mean, you go talk to the Homers, they're booked for like 18 months out, and because they're very busy, and so I don't think it's putting a lot of onus on them and difficulty for them to be at the time of the application process to figure out when they want to be at White Lake, Field, or Station Park. They'll specify that in the license. And then the issue of whether, if they want to go there, 52 days, 52 weeks out of the year, and they're only paying $75, it's a pretty good deal. Whether we want to change that, is another issue. But I think that, they will, this idea that they're going to just sort of indiscriminately show up and we're not going to know and be able to regulate, I think that the ordinance as drafted kind of deals with that.
maybe not with a mature truck, but with ice cream trucks and like different things like that that are just kind of more running around some of these things are the equivalent of
Right, I mean, how do
like
we,
ambulance chaser, right? Like an ambulance
well,
chaser.
but I mean-
Oh, a softball tournament.
are we getting rid of the ice cream truck? 'Cause
No,
he
that's
shows-
under
No.
peddler's license.
We don't want to
That's a
get rid of
different
the
license.
ice cream
That's under
truck.
the peddler's license because
That's a
they
peddler's
move.
license. Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
the food truck. But my point is too, there are businesses that are trying to build that do go out on these sports websites in these different places and say, I'm going to show up here because they're having a tournament and it says there's going to be 2,000 people. It's great, you know what I mean? So yes, there are some events where trucks have to sign up and be accepted. And I think that's where, again, my concern is, hey, you could be an approved food truck and come out for these events and whatnot.
Yeah, I
But
think if we're gonna
managing
let
one-
somebody sign, do a year permit, to ask them to put every single place they're gonna be and when they're gonna be there, that's too much.
I agree with you 100%. That's what I'm saying. You put the license together, you say who you are. The other thing is, you have to have proof that you were invited. The onus is on the food truck people. So you better get an email from whoever the event organizer is, because if 6 food trucks show up and the police show up and say, who's got an invitation, those food truck people better have something in writing. It's not on the township. It's on the people that own the food truck.
Just from having, food trucks in our neighborhood, I'll tell you,
Mm-hmm.
if we told them that there's gonna be another truck there, they'd be like, well, we're not coming.
Of course.
They're not putting themselves in a situation to spend all that money on their food, on their staff, to show up and not make money.
But at something at that, you wouldn't have another truck just showing up. Like if you invite a food truck to your neighborhood,
They're not just driving around looking for places to go.
no, but that might not be true, the same situation in parks and playgrounds. That's what I'm saying. For your use, you're exactly right. You're gonna invite a food truck, the neighborhood, it's gonna come to the neighborhood and it's over.
I just don't think they're driving around to look for a park that they hope people are at.
So then I have no problem, again, I have no problem if we want to say, hey, we're gonna give a license and those people can go to the parks. But I think in some level, don't you think they should at least be invited to go to the park? Or you think we should just give them free rein and say, just go to
Can I
the
make a
park?
comment real quick? On the police end, for us to go out and look at an email, see who's invited, we have to, we don't know who it is. They could have an email from, we don't know who the organizer is of the event. And you have 20 food trucks show up at some place, we're gonna go from one truck to the next to make sure we're not gonna, that's not gonna.
That's not your job.
No, it's not.
That's not your job. I mean, and that's the whole point, is like, we can't make rules that we're not gonna enforce, that are just.
We can get really cute with this, and this is, and I've tried to consolidate all the feedback, and there's just so many rabbit holes, and the more complex you make it, the harder it is to administer, and it just
Let's
becomes
just make it
unadministrable.
simple.
So I would suggest, let's make it simple as possible, and then as we see problems, we can plug those holes. But until we see problems, I think we shouldn't try to solve problems that might not be there. That said, we were stuck on the fee schedule. My recommendation would be to leave it alone for now because, 1 event, 2 events per event for the whole year. I think once you're licensed and you're in Sparta, it costs you $75. You can operate in Sparta, and we'll figure out like you have permission for this event or not. Let's figure that later, but, door number 1. And by the way, we tried to do this a couple of years ago, and we got stuck in this morass, and that's why we had a food truck. We tried it a while ago. It didn't work, and we're just trying to do it now. It's hard. So in any case,
I guess, Dan, one thing on that, though, do we want to adjust the maximum time this is valid for? So if a truck is only paying $75 for the whole year, to me, that seems too low, right?
What are they paying for? We're only charging a fee to absorb administrative costs. We're not trying to penalize
Yeah,
them.
we're not
for
trying to
doing
make
business.
money on it. We're just
yeah,
trying
this
to
is
make
just
sure
covering
we're
administrative
Well,
costs.
We're
yeah,
trying to
but-
recoup our administrative,
Yep.
generating the license.
No, I
that's
agree
all.
with that. So if there's a truck that goes out, once a month, right, or once a month and does something like a small local one that really focuses on their business and they go out once a month, and you have another truck that goes out 100 times every Friday or Saturday,
I
Saturday,
think
Sunday.
that's
for a
just the
year.
nature of the
Takes
business.
the same
Yeah.
amount of time to generate a license.
Well, no,
There's no
internally, I
difference.
know that, but are we trying to make it easier for the local one? It doesn't go as much?
Well, I think
Yeah.
to my question would be, I think that the yearly fee should be less for local businesses and local business owners than from out-of-towners. If we were trying to support local business, I would like to see the fee structured not by usage, but by where the business is. So if it's a local business, I think that we should have I don't care if the permit's a year, because that saves time for Roxanne generating all these permits. Should be the permit's a year. And then if you're a business or a business owner from Sparta or a business in Sparta with a food truck, it's $35 for the year. And if you're from out of town, it's $100 a year. And that's that. One time, one license, 2 fees, if either you're a local business owner or a local food truck, or you're not.
Is there any issues with charging somebody who's domiciled in Sparta differently than somebody who's domiciled in Franklin?
Well.
And somebody say you're
Somebody could craft an argument that it's discriminatory. I mean, that's possible.
Could I set up an LLC in Sparta just so I can?
I don't think it's unusual to have resident preference or a business preference, but I couldn't preclude someone.
Could we charge
crafting
them
it.
the same and offer Sparta residents a coupon? Like, charge the same and say you get a deduction if you're a Sparta business? So we are charging the same,
Yeah,
but
it's
is it, I mean, it's 6 of one and a half dozen of another, I guess, but.
I still think there needs to be a single event fee, because if there was a last minute sports program that wants somebody to come and go to their game, to ask them to do a $75 license, I don't think is fair.
Would somebody come to Sparta just for one event for the whole year? I mean, is that a thing, or maybe it is, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I can tell you, like, just if they wanted, say their snack shack person is not around, they can't do it, but they still want the people to be able to have food for the whole day, because when football plays, they have games the whole entire day. So they might all of a sudden last minute say, okay, let's get a food truck here for this Saturday. So they could. I mean, I'm just trying to think of things that could happen that this would make it hard for them to do that. I don't want to encumber people.
It's a
with-
very fair point. The problem is once you get, is it per event? So if you go to 2 events, do you charge twice that, and 3
Yeah,
events,
well, I
three
think
times that? And
it's
now I have
each
to
event-
project how many events for the whole year that I need. Or else I have to do
they
that
do the year.
every single event.
No, it's like they feel like they're going to be coming to Sparta a lot, then they should do the class 4.
Why don't we call it an emergency permit and issue it for like $15? Seriously, here's our things. And if you need an emergency permit,
Just do an event,
it's
Okay,
$15.
for event.
an event permit. You don't have to call it emergency, it's an event permit. If you're only doing one event, it's $10. If you feel like you might do more business in Sparta and it's cheaper for you to do the yearly permit, do the yearly permit. That's a judgment call for the business.
I'm okay with that. Any other comments on that?
I have
So
a
our fee
comment.
structure is $75 for the year, 15 per event. We
Yeah.
haven't talked to the Sparta, non-Sparta thing yet, but
Yeah, I do. It's related to use case E though, about a retail food establishment having a mobile unit at its location. So I don't know if we want to go there yet.
I don't want to go. I want to solve this
Yeah.
problem first.
Okay, well, it's related to it because we're talking
Okay.
about duration of, so if somebody buys an annual permit for $75, whatever it costs, I don't care if it's dollar or free, do we really want a mobile unit at a business location for a year straight?
Okay.
I think that creates problems with.
We haven't,
Yeah,
let's cross that bridge because that's an
Okay.
interesting discussion. So let's do this. Let's make it 15/75 and we'll come back to it at the end because I think there's other things we can fry and maybe we can revisit that. I'm still stuck on the public event, like a tournament that's not on White Lake Field or Station Park, or the concert series. Do we want to have the event holder sign off on, yes, I approve this vendor being here? As we just heard, how do you police that, or how do you enforce that? I don't know. I struggled with it myself. Because as you get all these permissions required from the event holder, the property holder, if you're parked on private property, from the township, if you're parked on the public property, does that create a morass of trying to get all the approvals so that you can hand the approval off to the zoning and enforcement person who's going to say, yes, you're supposed to be here?
I don't want to give them more work to do.
I don't either.
I think that's up to the event holder to police. If a truck shows up that they didn't invite, then they should deal with that. I mean, I've never heard of that happening with no regulations. So the fact,
That
like
might
you
be
said,
solving a problem that doesn't
yeah,
exist,
I don't think that's a problem that's happened.
So references to permissions required, I think we can strike that whole thing out as being unadministrable. I think that wouldn't be unfair.
where you're, Dan?
I'm actually going down the line. I think speaking only for myself, having this matrix of permissions that are required under different circumstances and different use cases become unadministrable if you're asking a zoning official or a police officer to come out and figure out if that has the right approvals. Are these approvals valid? Have they been registered? I mean, it's hard to enforce that. I'm trying to find out where that is. It is in specific, in various areas where it says like township license is not required and township license is required and permission from the owner is required. It's throughout the
Well, you're
the
referring
ordinance.
to the mobile food vendor locations where it states that
Yeah.
private property to serve their own guests, township license is not required.
Right.
And then we identify areas where it is required.
Correct. And I thought we also had in here that the event holder also has to sign off to have an approval.
I can't find it, but.
See it either.
I don't see it either now. Right, so I think we're just talking about the license required or not required. Yeah, I don't see it either.
We could just leave ABC, right?
This would be ABC.
No, it's, you're referring to a section 11-10.4 application process, number 6. If the mobile unit.
There you go.
yeah,
Yep.
Will be at a public event, the mobile food vendor must have written or electronic transmitted permission from the property owner, the event organizer, and the
Yeah.
township, if applicable.
So
We could leave that. It's not, the onus isn't on us. It's saying that they need to get that from whoever's running the event and invited them, right?
well, and the township, so we're saying the township also be involved,
If it's a township event, like Sparta Day, I'm assuming.
like Sparta Day, like the Earth Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, so I think we're saying is we're going to leave out all references to township approvals or licenses in this case because that's hard to administer. I'm also of the opinion that we should leave out property owner and event organizer permissions again because it's difficult to administer. And maybe we're solving a problem that doesn't exist. Actually, should we take a break, Chris? Okay. Should we take a break for 10 minutes?
Yeah, why don't we do
Yeah,
that?
It's 9:15. All right, may I have a motion to put the discussion on the shelf and and have a 5-minute break, 10-minute break?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
We are in break for 10 minutes. See you at 9:25.
She's got a message. So I don't know if her son's in class right now or something, but.
Wow. Thanks for letting me know. But you know, something, actually, this is actually a healthy discussion.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, you need to remember that
Sure, go right ahead. It's not mine.
enforcement is everything. Once you don't have it in the statute, you can't do anything,
Understood.
you know? And so I would keep things in there as an enforcement mechanism because, say, for example, you have this public issue here, you know, and all of a sudden there is, you know, the property owner's like, wait a minute, you just parked the food truck, you know, at my business. So let's take Mohawk School. You have that business at, let's say, Dr. Hart Orthodontics, and the food truck just plops it right down there. And he's like, what are you doing?
Well,
And you can't do anything about it because you don't have,
well, maybe you can because it's your property. Get off my property.
well, I mean, the problem is that if we know in advance where it's gonna be, we can head off those problems, right? We can head off, and if this doesn't, you know, says, well, listen, there's nothing stopping me from parking in Dr. Hart's thing. I can do this.
But you can't because you're parking on somebody else's property. It's like somebody parking on my driveway. Get the hell out of my driveway.
But, you know, I mean, I think that part of it is just to head off some of this. I mean, we're trying to create, you know, have some, part of these rules are here, so we know what the heck is going on in this town. This idea that we're just gonna free-for-all it, I think is a bad idea.
The Lake Beaches want to have one, they don't barely have any parking.
Okay.
I was in CBS parking lot, she was just.
Yeah.
Remember that.
So because she had the mobile license, she thought this is
Actually, a healthy discussion.
Yeah.
This is actually why I got into this.
Say, local businesses pay. Part of that, we don't charge them, they already have a hotel license.
Yeah.
We don't charge them local restaurants if they already.
That's a great point, so this idea that you need to lower the fee structure for a Sparta business, the only reason the most likely Sparta business would be a retail food establishment, which already has, and they don't have to pay the fee anyway, because my guess is they pay a larger fee to be.
On seats, like how many seats they have.
I see. And that would cover the mobile, yeah. Okay. So they're already getting a break in a sense. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we don't need to.
Car show and that stuff. You guys know we're gonna be.
Get out of here.
But like, I know we have to. DFW does, well, that's a private deal. That's actually a school property. Oh, yeah, so still. Same thing, yeah, I can picture that, like, with a no, you can't be here. That'd be fun. To the DFW, whatever they make on that food, they'll put in their.
$75.
And that's what we're already doing.
Oh, I don't care.
So, you have, chief.
Okay. Yeah, I went to Wayne Valley, I graduated in '83.
So you're a private homeowner, you decide, hey, I want to have a food, maybe I want a food truck, I want a food company in town, or I want to have a food truck in my driveway.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just figure it out.
And the police station's right there.
Then are you conducting a business in a residential area?
Right, well, this ordinance would be that. Yeah, I mean, every once in a, like an audit, I mean, you go out, you do a spot check every once in a while. You don't go every time. But I can have a dedicated mobile truck enforcement officer.
Well, you have two then, like, there's people that are actual mobile food truck, and then you have the pop-ups, so they're not even a truck, they're just trying to go different.
What you, by pop-ups, what do you mean?
So they just bring their stuff, they don't actually have,
What do they do, set up a table or
yeah, like a
something?
tent or a
Where,
table.
where are they doing that?
Hot dog stand, I think it was. Yeah.
At least that's where they were recently.
Yes, yeah, before that, Betty's Little Bay.
Okay.
You went up over that hill, and it's a beautiful log cabin.
Okay.
That's where Jenny,
How about that?
that's where they grew up.
Okay.
See,
I
once,
think it's still a lot.
it is.
Okay.
Right like that.
Yeah,
All right.
I mean, that would be covered with the language we have whereby the township manager or his designee could control that. So,
My dad, when he first started coming out, my grandfather, they lived in Victoria.
right.
And they would come
Well,
out every
you
summer.
remember, we got in here that their application for a license has to be 10 business days in advance. So they gave those examples of Friday for a Saturday event. That's exactly what we don't want. That's exactly what you don't want. No, I got a lot of notes here.
All right, so when we last left our heroes, we were still trying to figure out the efficacy, if that's the right word, of requiring permits, licensing, and approvals for operating in different places on a private property for a public event, and whether or not that's administrable. Door number one is to say, the more complicated you make this thing, the harder it is to administer, and it becomes just harder. The other thing too is if you leave those controls in place in case you find out later that you need it, and you don't have to administer it if you don't want to, but if you find out you do need it, then the tool's already there and you can use it, is another argument I heard. Is there any, so right now we have the approvals are in here insofar as the township approvals required for certain use cases, and the property owner and the event organizer required for the public events. Is there an argument to be made to take those out? Or should we just leave them there and see and live with it and see if it's
Which
hard to
ones-
live with?
Which ones specifically?
Okay, so let's go back to our use cases. This is a public event parked on public property. Do we want a single event, not just a general soccer practice? This is we're talking about Earth Day, we're talking about a concert. Public event, public property. Do we want the event holder to provide permission?
So I'd go even further. I would say if it's a single event, maybe we don't even require a permit. If we're talking about, we want a permit, we want to know who's operating businesses in Sparta, I would think that means more than just coming for one
Right.
day to help a nonprofit out.
Well, there's a food outbreak, and we want to make sure we can trace it back to, who was at the concert, and, or an illness outbreak, I meant to say.
That's a good point.
I mean, I think that what you're talking about is under section 1110.4, you would.
Number
you would
6.
add- And number 6, you would strike number 6. And what would be the reasoning for striking number 6? I think if you're talking about the administrative headache, which is they're applying and the person behind the desk who's looking at the application says, well, I need permission from the property owner. Okay, I have that. What about the event owner? No, I don't have that. I don't know. I can't get a hold of them. And so that it adds, sort of layers of additional work for the clerk to figure out how to get the approval. So
Right, and then the officer comes out there to the event. Do you have your approvals? Well, I tried to call so-and-so. He said it was okay. I don't have my email on me. How do you enforce that?
I mean, you don't enforce it until there's an issue. I mean, the reason behind requiring the property owner is because, for example, there are public events where they could theoretically park
On private property.
on a private property
Sacagawea.
without the permission of the actual property owner, and therefore there's a problem, right?
Right.
And so what this does is it prevents, what this would do, what 6 is intended to do, is to head that off, right? So you can have two ways about it. You can say, one, we're going to head this off by getting the property owner, and so there's not going to be a fight. Or we can wait to see, and hopefully, a food truck will use good judgment and not say, hey, wow, I'm going to go park in Larry Hart's parking lot to serve, Mohawk Avenue School field, and they haven't even talked to Larry Hart, at the time. Hopefully they'll use good judgment and not do that, I think.
If we get called out to something like this, most likely, these food trucks are gonna go to an area where there's gonna be a lot of people. They're not gonna show up at somebody's house uninvited and expect the neighbors to come out.
In your driveway,
Right?
yeah.
So it would be something along the lines like, okay, let's say Liquor Factory, food truck shows up, Liquor Factory calls, say, hey, this guy shows up in our parking lot. We didn't invite him here, we don't want him here, this is private property. We would go there, we would advise the individual, this is private property, now welcome here, you need to leave. If they don't, the owner of the property has the right to tow that motor vehicle out of there at their expense. And so most times, you're not gonna have that issue because they're not gonna want their service towed.
We don't need an ordinance for
Yeah, it's covered, yeah.
It's more so on, White Lake Fields, the public property. We get out there, I'm not sure who would complain, but I would assume that if they're gonna put a permit with the town's gonna know that these food trucks put in permits for the town and are allowed at White Lake Field, at Station Park, Ungerman Field, and so on and so forth. We're gonna have that information from the clerk's office.
Okay, so let's go there next, because that might be the easiest thing to adjudicate. Parked on public property, serving the public, and what the ordinance says right now, that's restricted to White Lake Field and Station Park, because right now there's no other, you're not going to cannibalize, if that's the right word, from any other brick and mortar food vendors, because there's nothing brick and mortar out there. So I haven't heard any objections to that. Is there any?
We should include schools, to your point. If you're having a concert series at the Mohawk Avenue Schools, that's public property as well.
What would be an event?
But you'd have to get permission from the
The
Board of
event.
Ed, I believe,
From the
on
Board of
that.
Ed. But I'm just saying, I don't think we want to leave them out of this, that might be separate. Maybe something for them. I'm just saying, I don't know. That food truck shows up at the concert series. Isn't that driveway property of the school, not the town?
Well, I believe the town owns the library parking lot.
The library parking lot, but not where the concerts, I mean, in the back
That-
there, if they were going down
That's
there.
that's the Board of Ed property. The
Right.
driveway around the back, Dykstra Park is the township.
That's C, right? That's use case C. It's a specific date.
Yep. Okay, so let's go back to public property, serving the public, White Lake Field and Station Park. I think we're all okay on that, are we?
Well, there's a question that came up earlier about number part 3, about the manager may set a limit on the number.
Yep.
And if this is for serving the public in general, that doesn't apply to a specific event, like a food truck event or like
Right,
a
this is
single,
soccer practice.
that would go back up to
lacrosse
C,
practice.
right? This is just D, so in general, they could just show up when they want and serve food. So do we want to have a limit or more language around that?
Right, and that's why the township manager can set the limit. We made the onus on the township manager in case there became a problem, and somebody can call and say, there's a problem here, and the township manager can say, I'm limiting it to 2, just kick the rest of them out or whatever, without getting too cute with the rules and the administration, the language of it.
That's hard to enforce though, right? If that scenario happens, so too many show up, who do you tell to leave?
No, I mean, you have to remember that it does have to require, that's why we had the requirement of specifying the date, because I think that if, our township manager sees that, oh my goodness, there's gonna be 55 food trucks on March 3rd, 2024, it's probably gonna be like, no, I think we need to cut it back, right? I think that we're gonna learn the amount that we can have, because it's different when you have a food truck festival, right? Because everyone's there for the festival. But if we're having a softball game, a football game, a baseball game, we need to keep the free flow circulation of traffic, and that's going to limit the amount of food trucks. And I think the township manager, in consultation with the Sparta police, can make that determination. They're in the best position to figure that out, and we'll have to kind of learn by doing, I think. So, I think it's important to keep the requirement that the vendor does specify the dates that they want to be there, just so we can have, appropriate regulation of it and not have inundated. Even though I agree with Councilman Hertzberg, capitalism will take over. And, if they show up one day and there's 20 other competitors there, they're probably not going to come back.
I just don't think it's realistic that they're gonna know exactly what days they're gonna go.
I mean, based on my discussion,
It's
they're
not
pretty
happening
booked
now.
out.
You
I
don't have
mean,
food trucks showing up in these fields.
So it's fine. I mean, I think just leave it alone, keep it simple, and you get your thing and.
Address it if it becomes an issue instead of making regulations.
That's why I'm inclined to, just unless there's something egregious in here, and I think the fee schedule is one thing that was a good idea, a good example. I don't know if it's egregious, but something is completely unacceptable in here. I would, my own opinion would be to, let's just live with what's in here. And again, unless there's something that sticks out as this is terrible, and then live with it for a while, and then if it becomes unworkable, we'll make it better, like agile software
Yeah, but we're
development.
making people, we're putting them in a position.
So that's the
to find-
egregious part, so, I'm sorry.
right,
I
let's go
didn't
back.
mean to interrupt.
let's go back to, single events, right? Chris brought up a good point. Like, what if somebody has a truck lined up, all of a sudden they have an emergency the day of or the day
Yep.
before, and they have to scramble to get somebody,
Yep.
you know,
I
and
don't-
it's on the weekend. What do they do?
I don't have a approval from, I haven't filled out an event permit.
You know, not to muddy the water, but not understand that this proposed ordinance has a 10-day requirement. In other words, anyone who's applying for a Sparta license will have to do so 10 business days in advance
Oh, my
of the
God.
event. The intention of that was, again, to protect the clerk's office
Yeah.
from getting Friday afternoon
I know.
calls when
That's right, I forgot about
trying to
that.
get an agenda
But
together.
we're gonna make it
for
impossible for
Tuesday,
people in
night
those
meeting.
situations.
Yeah, I think we're,
Well, hold on, let me,
Yeah.
my point was, I don't think we need to require a permit for a single day event. Now, your point about the, food outbreak. If there's a food outbreak, and people left an event like that, we're gonna know that. People are there gonna know which truck it was. That's a
agree.
good, you brought up a good point, but I had to think through it. I just don't see the reason that we need a permit if a truck is showing up for one day for an event. And that alleviates the problem if there is a cancellation, somebody needs a last minute truck. It covers all. I just don't see the need for it.
I think the need would be based upon to prevent the inundation of food truck. If they don't have, if you get unlimited amount of food trucks for an event and they don't have to any permit, I think the concern, is,
Single,
Yeah.
so you put in there, single truck, single event.
First come, first serve.
Well, I mean, I think it has to be, I think the other rules can apply as far as, they have to be invited for a single event by an event holder. And if all of those things are applicable, then they don't need a permit.
So you're striking the township as the township would be the permit. So they would still need property owner and the event holder, event organizer.
Yep.
And there's a complaint, officer shows up and says, I've got my email from the event holder and the property owner saying I'm allowed to be here. And,
Or they're there because the property holder or the event holder should be at
Right.
the event.
well, if it's parked like in Mohawk Avenue School for the concert,
Right, okay, so then, yeah, maybe they require to have an email that they can provide if questioned.
I think that's fair. Anybody else, any other comment? So we're from 11-10.4, some, on number 6, we're striking the last phrase, in the township, so the township permit is not required for this single event.
How do we define a single event, though? Is the summer concert series each a single event?
I would say each concert would be an event, like every tournament would be an event, softball tournament,
Single event.
a
being
parade.
Starting time, ending time of a single day.
I'm going to call that a victory.
like, I'm just wondering,
I'm still have concerns about the one, you have a concert and you're saying that it'll be unlimited amount, people could just show up. All the food truck people
No, the event
start
will-
talking to one another and say, oh man, there's gonna be a concert at Ungerman Field, let's go. And there could be 10 food trucks there and we have no idea, and all of a sudden we're hit with it.
But the event organizer has to send you an email saying, is the event organizer going to invite all 10 trucks? Maybe.
We'll say that in this case, it's a single truck only. If you're gonna be able to fall under the non-permitting clause, it's a single truck, a single event. You have to have proof that you were invited. Because you're right.
We actually we talked about, somebody
well,
did
they have
mention
different
having
people
one
performing
truck
at
per
each one of
event.
these things. Maybe they want a different food truck.
No, they could have a different one.
That's what I'm saying. They could have, it, and then it becomes, instead of one big series, it's one-offs for each truck, right?
So if under 11-10.4, we're going to have one truck per event.
I think that's restrictive.
It is.
Yeah, because if you want a food truck and a ice cream truck, right, or you have a,
Well, ice cream truck is different.
oh, okay, so you have a,
Under this ordinance, I'm not sure if I agree with that. The ice cream truck is mobile, it's preparing food, it's selling food. But we would have to specifically set forth, I think, in this ordinance that the ice cream truck is exempt from this ordinance. Otherwise, I think it's a mobile food.
When it's at an event, it's a mobile food truck. When it's going down the street or that's a
If it's-
peddler.
Yeah,
right?
if it's moving as a peddler.
Yeah.
But if it pulls in and sits parked,
Yeah.
Okay, let's go through one more use case before it gets too late, and then we'll come back if we need to. The other use case is a parked on a private property serving the public at large, and this is the example of someone parked at the Sparta Dairy. And the thinking is that this establishment is already selling food, whereas somebody parked at the PNC Bank is not a food vendor. So somebody who's already selling food can offer other food choices on their property.
So the talking about E, retail food establishments?
I am talking about
Yeah.
E,
So
correct?
my concern around this one is the duration. Is there a limit on the frequency? You know, how many days per month? Can there be a permit and the person uses it, 7 days a week or 5 days a week for a whole year? I think there's a problem there in terms of that zone, that place was set up for this many seats, this much parking, this kind of signage. I think if we have right next to it another food choice, I think that's going beyond what the intent of a mobile food vendor policy would be. It's no longer a mobile food policy, right? Then it's more stationary. So maybe we might want to limit the frequency, how long it gets.
How many days a week? 1 day a week, 2 days a week?
How are we ever gonna know that, and how are we ever gonna implement that? I don't know, again, I keep going back to all the other ordinances of the different towns. And maybe rather than trying to cram what we want into this document, maybe we just need to very simply list, we're concerned that trucks are gonna be on the road blocking traffic. We're concerned that trucks aren't gonna be screened. We're concerned that on public property, whatever. We're concerned, like, maybe we should write bullet points. This thing is very detailed. I feel like we're getting into the weeds. And when I look at the amount of pages that this thing is and online as well, looking at other towns, some of their stuff is a paragraph. Like, it's very, very simplistic. It's not this complicated.
No.
I mean, I'm just throwing it
I
out
mean,
there.
even E, I think, we're overcomplicating it because we haven't had an issue. I mean, the only one that I'm familiar with that's doing on a consistent basis is Sparta Dairy, and I don't think there's been an issue.
And the liquor
Right, which is why we're
factory.
carving that out to make sure that's okay.
I mean, I think there was a food truck at PNC parking lot that was, that was serving the public.
No, that I agree with.
Yeah, and so that's why we kind of limited it to, if you're already a retail food establishment, you can have a food truck. But I think, Councilman Blumetti's point is well taken, which is, what I think he's getting at is that somewhat, this is an end run, a crafty business owner could say, you know what, I could expand my business and go to the planning board and say, you know what, I want to start offering lobster rolls on top of that, and I'm gonna have, a new section in my business that has that. And now I gotta go before the planning board, I gotta expand my business, or I could just get a lobster roll food truck, park it there 365 days a year, and put it in, and take up 4 of my parking spaces, and then have one issue I understand is there's the safety issue would be, if you had it in the existing business, you don't have, the people are actually in the business, they're not in the middle of the parking lot, right? They're in the business, and they're not gonna get hit by a car. Now, if you have a food truck right there, they're now lining up and queuing up into the circulation pattern of the business, right? Right, and so now you've got, 20 people lined up, and the car is trying to do that U-turn around, go around Sparta, and they can't because now they got a line of 10 people. And that's the concern,
And-
right?
yeah.
I'm just trying to articulate.
Yeah, I mean,
what you're-
this is about mobile food vendors, and there's a definition of what mobile unit means. Parking it in one spot for a long period of time, where then it becomes a sort of a quasi drive-through or walk-up, is not what that property might not be zoned for.
So I think.
How are we defining
I'm
mobile
okay
food
with-
vendor?
With there being some kind of limitation, as long as there's the ability to override it for a good reason.
we define mobile unit as a movable restaurant, truck, van, blah, 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 that is used to prepare, transport food, but the operative phrase is for retail food or sale or getting away at temporary locations. So if it's parked there 365 days a week, it's not, you can argue it's not temporary. And so I think that's dealt with in this ordinance. I think we can get really, this might be an example, we can get really cute with how many days of the week they can be parked there. And I think until it shows up as a problem, maybe we don't solve it.
Maybe that would just be a zoning issue, a zoning
Yeah.
enforcement issue.
So I think the definition of a mobile food truck being a temporary location will take care of anybody that's taking advantage of that.
I agree.
But that's a good point, though. All right, so in sum, is there anything that anything we haven't talked about that we should have talked about rather than any, I don't want to go back and talk about the stuff we've already talked about, just anything new that hasn't been brought up yet that we should.
I think the one thing was, it's not a use case. It's under 1110.6, general operational requirements for mobile food vendors. Number I says that they have to, unless operating at a specific event, no mobile food vendor shall be permitted to operate outside the hours of 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Just to make it consistent, since we're allowing food trucks at retail food establishments, I would carve out such that the mobile food truck at the retail food establishment shall be there at the same operating hours as the retail food establishment. So if Sparta Dairy is open from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Friday, the food truck technically should be allowed to be there for the same amount of hours.
I mean, yeah, why do we even have times? Like, can we just strike that?
Yeah, let's just pull it out.
I'm okay pulling it out
Who's gonna operate?
until it becomes a problem. That's a good point, though. All right, so I'm going to do this. Let's offer some actual amendments here. I'm going to make a motion myself to strike 11-10.6 sentence I.
Can I just say, I think we've made so many revisions to this, we need a clean copy at this point.
But we don't know what we're cleaning it to. So what I was going to do is to make a couple of motions on 4 things that I think we kind of gelled on, and we can vote on those, and then we'll see where we stand and go from there, because it's 9:45. So my motion stands, 11-10.6, striking sentence I. Do I have a second?
Striking the whole thing,
The whole thing.
11, 10.
11
Hours of operation.
hours of operation.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Do
Any?
you have to do these one by one, Dan, or not?
Yes. Sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstain?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Tom, does it make more sense for us to give you all the changes and have you come back with a changed ordinance rather than try and do this by one? I mean,
We have to arrive at the changes,
That's where I was heading.
We would have to reintroduce it and then.
and I'm fine reintroducing it.
Hearing.
I mean, I don't think it matters. We're not, there's no rush on this. But if
Yeah.
we had a clean copy that was done up with all the things we're talking about to look at, maybe this goes really smooth.
Okay, so let's do this along those lines, rather than do this one by one. That's one thing we already voted on, that's approved. I is stricken. Begone, foul I. Right, so the other things, I'm going to make another motion that we do a couple of things. Number 1, exempt ice cream trucks. Number 2, have 1 truck per event limit under section 11.10.4. That's number 2. And number 3, change the fee structure so that, no, we're not doing a per event thing anymore. So
I was gonna
yeah.
say, go back to that because you're talking about the single event.
Yep.
Single truck limit, no permit required with proof of invite via email or some other. way
Right.
you can show.
So ice cream exempt is number 1, 1 truck per event is 2, and we're also, number 3 is going to be striking the township permit required under 11-10.4, number 6.
Single event fee can go away.
So I actually don't agree with that. We're saying
Okay.
ice cream trucks parked at these they're exempt? I thought we said before that they're peddlers if they're going around the streets, door to door, whatever, if they come here, they're considered a mobile food.
Correct.
truck.
But then we gotta say, what's the time limit? Because they have to stop to serve the kids. So they're stopping no matter what.
If they're parked there the whole day because this concert, this particular artist wants an ice cream truck there the whole day, like they got to be considered, oh, I'm sorry, I'm making the other argument, don't I?
No, I think you're right. I mean, if they're parked there, it falls under this.
Yeah, and our peddler ordinance pertains to someone who's going.
I'm okay with a second truck if it's an ice cream truck.
That's fine.
Yeah, let's exempt the ice cream trucks. But that's my motion, and I'm going to stick to it. Number one, ice cream trucks exempt. Number two, one truck per event. Number three, township no longer required under 11-10.4, number 6. I'm sticking with it. Do I have a second?
You said only one truck?
One truck per, I got this, but we can all have it too. One truck per event. But ice cream trucks are a bonus truck.
All right. Yeah, I don't agree with it, but that's fine.
May I have a second?
Do one.
What's
Second.
number 3?
That under 11-10.4, number 6, we're striking the words "and the township." So the township is no longer, permission is required for a single event. And again, if we find it's a problem, we can go back to it later. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion before we vote on that package of changes?
If it could be answered really quickly, why are we limiting it to one? If it can't be, that's fine.
I think let's just start with one. I have no good reason at this point.
But just to be clear, under 1110.5, if they're parked on public property for a public event on a specific date, and it's more than one event, there's still a township license required, right? Because under 11, because what you have to figure out is, by exempting this, are you now in conflict with 1110.5C?
So what do you mean if it's not a single event?
Because what this says is, right now, under the ordinance as drafted.
it's
if
in
you're
conflict with that.
Parked on public property for a public event on a specific date, a license is required.
Yeah, so that we'll have to strike that too, if we're going to be consistent. That's a good pickup. Okay, so that's my pack. I'm going to, just to clarify, number one, ice cream trucks exempt. Number two, one truck per event. Number three, 11-10.4, number 6, striking the township required. And number 4, 11-10.5C is also stricken.
So just to clarify, the single truck thing is only to qualify for the no permit required. An event can have more than one truck, but they're gonna require permits. Yeah,
We don't want to go back to just
if you're
one.
gonna have if you're gonna have a football game, a softball game, and you want a truck to come quick, you don't need a permit. You're having an event.
Well, if you're like Field or Station Park, doesn't matter. You can have as many trucks as you want there, well, unless, subject to the town manager. We're talking about events like a softball tournament on Dykstra.
Right, but if they're gonna have a softball tournament, and they know they want more than one truck, and they know the softball tournament's coming, they can schedule that, they can do that. I'm saying we shouldn't limit them to one truck if they're gonna get permits. Only to qualify for the no permit, we're trying to alleviate the emergency situations where,
Right.
that was my intention, was.
I think if you do
I
that,
agree.
then you're going to need to keep 11-10.5C. So the way it would read would be parked on public property for a public event on a specific date. Township license is required if there will be more than one mobile food truck.
That, or you just have an exemption, you just have single event with a single truck, no permit is required with proof of invite for that event. Single event exemption, otherwise, if you're having a large event, you want more than one truck, however you want to do it.
Either works.
Same result.
Same result, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, it just makes, I would keep the provision and just add it, that if, unless township license required, if there will be more than one mobile food unit.
Okay. Since I made the motion to accept, and it was accepted, I'm going to retract my motion that I just made so I can revise it. Do I have to have a second for retracting it?
Sorry, was your motion seconded?
It was seconded, yes.
In their second.
Josh, are you retracting your
I
second?
retract.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so now I'm going to make a new motion. We're going to make the following changes. Number 1, ice cream trucks are exempt. Number 2, under 11-10-4, number 6, that township, we're going to add a sentence that says the township permit is not required if only one truck is at the event. And the third change we're going to make is that under 11-10.5C, that we're going to change that to that the license is required if 2 or more trucks are at an event. I think that's it. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Please say no. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Okay, is there anything else? Can we beat this anymore? Anything else we can say about 23-16? Anybody else have anything to add?
So we can't put it through anyway because we changed too much of it.
That's what,
Did we change too much of it?
Would that have a nice copy that everyone will understand better than we do right now?
I will forward notes.
Publish 10 days. Be able to revise, publish the new ordinance by the next council meeting.
I will send notes on what and I'll send it to everybody to make sure I got them right, and then we'll reintroduce it, and we'll wash, rinse, repeat. Okay, so we made those changes. Is there anything else we have to do to finish our discussion of 23-16?
I know we have
No, it has, the ordinance has been amended. The amendments are going to be incorporated into the new ordinance as revised, and we'll be publishing that ordinance, and then it will be presented for a hearing
Okay,
again.
grazie. All right, that said, will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 23-17?
The Township of Sparta amending the salary ordinance for non-union and union employees.
Thank you. May I have a,
so moved?
thank you. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, at this time, I'll open up to the public for any comments on ordinance 23-17.
Rex tap into Sparta. What is do we know what the delta is from last year to this year?
2.25%.
2.25% across the board. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? All right, bring it back to the dais. Any questions or comments on ordinance 23-17?
Just for me, where did the numbers come from? Like, how did we figure out that the chief financial officer should be between 110 and 180? Like, what's our benchmarks for each of these classifications? Where did we come up with the numbers?
Well, these were built off of the last ordinance, so you'd have to go back to the very first one, I guess, to start that. But, I mean, these get revised from time to time. But I think in this particular case, it was just a blanket 2.25% on top of, rounded, of course. But at some point, there might have been so maybe I shouldn't answer that. Sam, yeah.
The calculations were calculated out by our payroll department secretary first.
Going back in history, who determined that the band for the municipal department head being between 80 and 155? You'd have to go back over the years to figure out.
Right. If it's a municipal department head, they look at the different department heads and come up with a high, low type of thing, and basically look at it.
Okay, so because we've had discussions before, in fact, from various, department heads who said, look, you need to raise our rate here because we're trying to attract, qualified employees. And so what I'm driving at is the numbers that are in here are based upon what the department head thinks is a sufficient salary to attract, qualified applicants and qualified staff, right?
Some of the positions are combined with more than one job as well. You know, the person could feasibly be the purchasing agent maybe, and also Public Works Superintendent, if they've got both certificates.
I think
So that's what we look at. There, some of these may have had a different position built into it as well.
So I think there's a couple things to look at when it comes to the salary ordinance, Neil. One of them is the fact that the ordinance in some cases has most likely, based on the longevity of the employee over the years, been moved to accommodate that employee being able to stay in that position because they've superseded what the guideline is. In other cases, it could be that, for example, what's in this ordinance right now, what's approved, because we set the policy around this ordinance, could be detrimental to a department head, let's say, who's trying to, because we don't have those conversations. Those conversations would be between the department head and the manager, and then be brought back to us to say, hey, Manager X or Department Supervisor X is saying that he thinks this title within this salary ordinance, he recommends that this be raised for the reason that it's no longer competitive, for example. So ultimately, we approve these, but they should be coming from the department supervisors from them to the manager to us if they need to be changed, or if we see something glaring, we can look at it also and bring it back for discussion as well. So.
Yeah, that's just what I'm driving at. It's just trying to give the public an idea where these numbers come from, and that, for a library director in Sparta can make between 80 and 120, that, there's not my guess is the library director who came up with that ban is also looking at what neighboring municipalities pay for that. And they're not saying, well, they make 30,000 and everyone else, and we're going to pay 3 times that amount. That's not what's happening here. There's actual, reasoning and bases for each of these numbers that are in here. I just want to kind of reassure myself and the public that, these are competitive wages, and that are not totally an opposite to what would be paid in a similarly situated township. That's kind of what I'm driving at.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments on 2317? All right, hearing none, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Lumetti.
Yes.
Councilman Hertzberg.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Clark.
Yes.
Councilwoman Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Chiarello.
Yes, the ordinance is passed. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 23-18?
Ordinance requiring the installation of a key box emergency access system used by the Sparta Township Fire Department during an emergency or any other action deemed necessary by the Sparta Township Fire Department.
Thank you. May I have a motion to accept ordinance 23-18? And again, we'll have comments after it's been seconded.
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Excellent. At this time, I'd like to, do we want to bring up or
Yes.
people that give us a little overview of, you want to come up, people? All 3 of you can come up, or 2.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
That's the box they're talking about.
Hi, Chris Angelucci, Chief of the Sparta Fire Department. Tom McIntyre Jr., he's the Fire Prevention Officer for the Township. This ordinance, I think we talked about last time when it was introduced. This is a device that's in use in many, many towns. I mean, it's, I think, over 40 years. I think Sam said last time that these things have been used. And essentially what it allows is we would have business owners with particular types of occupancies purchase this. They come in different sizes. And install in here, they've installed on the outside of their buildings, and they would keep in here essentially at minimum a key or a fob to get into the building, front door. More than that, depending on the size and the complexity of the building, they may contain keys to mechanical closets, to closets where the fire alarm panels are. If it's an office building, to certain doors that would allow us essentially to inspect the building after hours. So many times we get called to activated fire alarms in commercial structures that are not occupied at night. And the basic premise there is we call for a key holder. We try to get someone that is responsible for the building to come out. We at all costs try to avoid damage to the building. We don't want to break doors down, and we don't want to break windows. And so essentially we wait, we'll do an inspection from the outside for as what we can. We could look through windows, doors, see if we see anything going on. Obviously, if we saw something going on, we would make entry into the building, force entry into the building. But in many cases, you can't really see beyond that room that you're looking through the window. And so you don't really know exactly what's going on in the building if the alarm's activated. So what these key boxes do, our apparatus will have a box on them and via a code system, so we know who opened the box. There'd be a master key on the apparatus that would allow us to open these boxes. Basically grab a key out, get into the building, so we can do a thorough inspection without having to wait sometimes an hour for a key holder, and sometimes key holders don't even show up. They choose not to show up. They say, I'm not coming. Sometimes, we don't have good phone numbers for them. The alarm companies don't have good phone numbers for them, so they can't even reach anybody. I'll give you an example. This year, we had a call on Wilson Drive at one of the businesses. We responded. The alarm wasn't active when we showed up. Actually, it was active when the patrol officer got there. By the time the fire department got there, a few minutes later, it wasn't active any longer. Did the same thing. We looked around through the windows, didn't see anything. And we couldn't get a hold of a key holder. There was no good number. And so we were going to, normal process would have been, okay, there's nothing going on. We don't see anything. We would have cleared the building and cleared the scene. In that case, one of our members went around to the backside of the building, found a door unlocked, and went into the building. And there was smoke in the building. So it was not anything we could see. There was no windows on the backside of the building, but through the windows in the front, because of the construction inside, you couldn't see the smoke from there. So in that case, we would have cleared, and they would have probably burnt the building down. So just one example. I mean, we go to businesses very often at night and can't get somebody to let us in the building. So these boxes will let us get into the building, let us to make a thorough inspection. We don't have to wait an hour for a key holder or maybe somebody that won't show up at all, and can thoroughly check the building and make sure, and not cause damage to the building, having to not just maybe break into the front door of the building, but have to break into other rooms in the building to thoroughly check it out. So that's the gist of the ordinance, is to, it's really a time saver. Keeps our members not on scene for an hour waiting for somebody to show up, and also lets us inspect the building thoroughly, quickly, to make sure there's nothing going on inside the building.
Right.
And this is the key box that the Historical Society actually bought. Even without the ordinance, we were at their location at 3 a.m. and couldn't get a hold of a key holder. We cleared the scene. We could see most of the inside of the building. There was nothing going on. But right after that, they decided to purchase a key box.
How much does that cost?
They vary in size. I think this one was around $320, $350. So again, depending on the complexity.
$1,000 front door.
Yeah. Yeah, a bigger building like 89 Sparta Ave, I've already talked to Atlantic Health. They're all in favor of this. They want us to have an ordinance. I've talked to other business owners. There's other business owners that have already ordered these. They're doing renovations to their buildings. They've already ordered them, even without us having an ordinance. But they need us to, the only way to lock a key in here is for us to go there with a key, ourselves or the fire prevention office. And so they can't really use them yet. So I think some, businesses are in favor of this. But again, back to your question of price, a cheap one, if you only have a front door key, get a small box. For large, complex buildings, like the health center on Sparta Ave, where they have a very complex alarm system. They have many doors that are locked because of the different tenants that are in there. It'll be a bigger box to handle all those things. And it's called out in the ordinance language what we need to have in the box.
Before we get, and thank you, before, if you can stay there, before we get to more questions from the dais, I think at this time we have to open it up to the public for comment. And if you can stay there for public questions, and then we'll come back to the dais. So if anybody from the public have any questions or comments on ordinance 23-18? Okay, now we're back in. Any other comments or questions from the dais?
a very simple one. Chief Angelucci and Fire Marshal McIntyre, would you agree that this ordinance is necessary to protect the safety of the public and the property of the business owner?
Absolutely, because of that time factor, allowing us to get into the building as soon as we arrive to ensure there's nothing going on inside the building.
And, you know, time that you lose looking around for the keys, or time you could be spent putting out the fire or addressing whatever emergency, is that right?
Absolutely. A lot of times fires don't start with blazing out the window. They start with smoke from, in that case, it was a burning, that I described was a burning power strip that eventually would have heated up, burnt the desk that it was under. And so these things sometimes start out slowly and they're not, you don't always pull up to a fire and there's fire blowing out of the roof. So absolutely. Time is the essence. Time is of the essence.
Thank you.
Council, if I may just, include in the language, I would like to have stating that the police department would have access to that also.
Good.
A lot of times we're on scene first, and we can relay proper information after our inspection of the exterior of the building if we were able to get into the fire department.
So, for example, not only for fire, but say if I'm a business owner and somehow the security gets tripped, and it turns out there's someone traipsing through my business, and you know, they shouldn't be there, then you would have access to the lockbox that you would be able to get in immediately and find the person who is now trespassing or up to no good in the building.
For burglar, for fire, for any alarm.
But also makes your job
Panic
easier
alarm.
and also probably makes the citizens of Sparta safer because we can apprehend someone quicker if we can get in the building quicker.
Yeah, so that's simple. We would, the intent of this is the fire department, we would equip our apparatus with one of these key boxes. Same thing on the patrol cars. They would have access to the key as well. It's a master key again that.
Yeah.
I have two questions, actually, and one leads to the other. So the first one is, you arrive on the scene, can't really see anything, but you suspect there might be a problem, and you need to get in, and you can't because you can't contact the owner, and you'd make the decision to break into the property, and you cause $5,000 worth of damage to the door, and let's say everything was fine, for argument's sake. Who is liable for the expense of that? Will the property owner tell you busted on my door, you didn't have to, I'm going to sue you for $5,000?
If we go there because they're alarm system, and generally these are central alarm systems in the buildings that call out to an alarm company, and that's how we get the call. If we're there responding to an alarm system that their system generated, and we have to force entry because we believe something's going on. And that's why we're very careful on that, by the way. We're not breaking down every door we go to. But if we have reasonable suspicion that there's something going on in the building, we're going to force entry into the building.
And you can't do that, and you don't have liability, or you don't have any risk exposure because.
I don't know the legalities of who that is, who would be responsible. If the township would be responsible for that, or if just their insurance company. Probably their insurance company.
Okay. And thank you. So my point is, but the way I read this, and maybe I'm reading incorrectly, that this seems to be required equipment. So we're going to require every business in town,
every building that fits the criteria that's called out in the ordinance.
Right.
So generally,
Section 2, it itemizes on page 3 all of the buildings that are subject to the ordinance.
Right. So there might be a business owner who is not comfortable with this for whatever reason. And the way this ordinance is written is that we're saying, that's too bad. You're forced to comply with this and to purchase a $400, $350 unit. And is there a maintenance and annual fee after that, or to maintain the system?
no, there isn't.
Okay, so it's a one-time. And
The maintenance for the building owner is to make sure that the proper keys are kept in the box. So if they change the locks, they need to make sure that it's kept up to date.
Does it need to be installed, like professionally installed?
It needs, the building owner is responsible for installing.
Is that in addition to the 350?
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
So there's we're forcing is a bad word, but every business is going to be required to purchase this, and it's possible that some business owners might not be comfortable turning the keys over to you for whatever reason, but we're still requiring. So the point of my first question was, If this is limiting liability on the town because, you know, I can't worry about having to break down a door, and it's a hard decision to make, and if I do, I could be liable for $5,000 in damages or insurances, then to me, that's one calculus. It makes sense for us to protect ourselves from that liability, that risk that says we want you to do this, and that saves a lot of problems, as you just talked about, a lot of problems. On the other hand, if the onus and the risk is entirely on the business owner, and, you know, if you don't want to put that box, so fine, you might lose a $5,000 door, and that business owner might make that calculus that I'm comfortable that I'm not comfortable handing the keys over to a municipal person. That's another calculus there. So
I would say that some business owners aren't comfortable spending money to repair their alarm systems either, and, you know, yet that's a law, you have to keep your alarm system in good order, so. You know, I think this is part of public safety.
Yeah.
And I think that, I would guess that business owner's insurance company
Yeah,
would prefer
that was
that,
my next
prefer them to
question
have
is,
this,
yeah, is that
and not have to incur $5,000, you know, claims.
I mean, you know, you probably don't know this, but I don't, you know, whether an insurance company, sort of like if you have, you know, I sort of analogize this to fire alarms all throughout the building. You know, your rate may even be lower if you have a lockbox compared to if you don't have one, because what it does is it enables y'all to get in there faster, thereby stopping the fire, limiting the damage. And so if I'm a reasonable insurance company, I'm going to say, if you got a lockbox, I'm going to give you a discount on the rate, and that savings from the rate will probably swamp the cost of the lockbox.
So the forced compliance makes me a little bit uncomfortable, but I understand the reasons.
I have a question sort of in those lines. Is there a minimum size commercial structure where this would not apply? And I'm thinking a single tiny building that has a insurance agent or a dentist or a doctor, you know, or a tiny restaurant. Is there a small size building where this doesn't apply to because it's exempt?
That's laid out in one of
Not
them.
by size, it goes, if you had a business that for some reason didn't have to have a central alarm system.
It's based on what the suppression systems are. If you have a fire alarm system, a sprinkler system, restaurants have kitchen hood suppression systems. If there's anything that's gonna go off, that's gonna call us to 123 Main Street, and we have to have access to that, that's really the point of it. I know over the winter time, we've had a lot of businesses where the pipes freeze, sprinklers are going off, you're now flooding 3 stories of a building. If there's 30 minutes out, large amount of water that's.
So, okay, so basically every commercial entity, is that what I'm understanding? So even if it's an art shop or a little office that someone has that they're using for, you know, just that use,
Anything that has a fire alarm system or a sprinkler system, essentially.
okay,
So if the building,
Or public buildings.
sure, yeah.
You know who doesn't have to have one? Mobile food truck.
Hold on, don't open it up again.
I'm making a motion to update the food truck ordinance.
With regard to this, I know it's not on this ordinance, but residents might be asking, they might be saying, hey, wait a second, I have an alarm at my house, and maybe I don't want maybe my door isn't $5,000, but maybe my door
Maybe it
is
is.
$1,500. You know, I know that it's not part of this ordinance, but is this thing available for homes? I mean, maybe there are people
I
looking at
think this is the
right now.
residential version, actually, I think.
Yeah, that box is
Yeah.
the residential
That's the
size
residential
box.
side?
Yeah, yeah, which I think the smallest commercial size is basically the same thing.
Okay, so if residents would like to comply with this program,
Right.
they can sign up for it by getting one of those things
Yeah.
and going to the police department or the fire department or however this works,
Yeah.
and saying, okay, I'm now a part of this thing, and they could put one of these lock boxes on their residence, so that the fire department or the police department, if an alarm was going off and nobody was home, they could get into the house quicker?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, if you
Not
want
mandatory.
to voluntarily do it on your home, or if you have a type of building that doesn't necessarily meet the requirements of the ordinance. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so you could opt in voluntarily if you wanted to with the home.
Yeah,
Outside.
the way this will work if we adopt the ordinance is, essentially, we will educate, obviously, the because there's certificate of occupancy requirements here and stuff, so we'll educate the building department, educate, town employees. But essentially, the building owner will go to a website and say, I need to purchase a Knox box for my business. They have to put in the state and the town, and they'll pick Sparta Fire Department, because then we'll actually get an email that says, hey, XYZ business is applying to have a Knox box. We actually have to approve that. That way we keep track of who is buying them, because again, when it comes down to them installing it, they'll get it, they'll install it. We have to go and lock it for them with our master key.
But a residential.
But anybody, yeah, I mean,
It's open if somebody who owns a residence wants to participate, they could.
yeah, typically the fire codes don't apply to single-family residences, but in this case, voluntarily, they can certainly buy one. Yep.
And we haven't put a timeline when these businesses have to have these
there
lock
is.
boxes. Is there a
Within 1 year.
Yeah.
1 year? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, I would encourage lessees who may have, say, an absent landlord who hasn't been around, or to tell them, hey, did you know there's an ordinance out there? You need to go get a lockbox. Because I know that there's some landlords that, are very, very diligent, and, that you see them every couple months. There's others that don't show up. You don't know how to find them. They need to be made aware that they got to get a lockbox within a year. Because if I'm a lessee, I don't want my stuff burning down unnecessarily if we can prevent it, so.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments from the dais?
Just a quick comment, just to give you an idea how good of an idea it is. I was a paid fireman in the city for 30 years. We had these 50 years ago. So Sparta isn't, they're catching up, but it's ideal. I was building and ground supervisor up at the Historical Society when these guys couldn't get in that night, right? So I've got, and not to be sexist, but I deal with 7 85-year-old women on the Board of Trustees. And when I told them about this thing, said it was going to cost it $350 and it was going to save us $1,000 door, the vote was 7-0 to buy it. So it's a money saver. If one time you get a call and they don't have to force entry, it just paid for itself.
Excellent. Thank you.
And your question about installation, the installation on this one on front of the Historical Society, because that
4
front
dead
wall
bolts,
is
yeah.
12 inches thick, calls for a 3/8-inch bolt, 4 of them, through the box, through the wall, on a plate inside and screwed tight. So yeah, these things aren't going anywhere once they're mounted.
Any other questions from the dais? Right. Hearing none, the ordinance was made and seconded. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Blumetti,
Yes.
Councilman Hertzberg,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Councilwoman Quinn,
Yes.
Mayor Chiarello.
Yes, the ordinance is passed. And thank you very much for helping us out
Thank
with
you.
this tonight, and for staying late. I know the food truck stuff was enthralling, but probably not. All right, where are we? At this time, like to open up to the public for any comments or questions on any of the resolutions, 9-1 through 9-12. Seeing none, open it to the dais. And any questions or comments on resolutions 9-1, 9-12, or things that we want to carve out for separate vote?
I'd like to carve out, due to questions, 9-2, 9-6, and 9-7.
9-6, 9-7 for questions.
9-1.
9-1. Let's just take the questions first, and then we'll, okay, let's take them one at a time then. So 9-1, Township of Sparta Emergency Resolution. We have a motion to accept Resolution 9-1.
I'll make a motion to accept or approve 9-1.
Thank you, and yes, any second? Can I have a second to approve 9-1? I will second it myself. Any comments or questions on 9-1?
I have questions on this.
Sure.
So if we read the ordinance here, 9-1, this is talking about a
Resolution.
reclassification of $75,000 for the planning board. Reclassification expense for the planning board. It says no adequate provision was made in the 2023 budget for the purpose. So we are now putting $75,000 in this emergency appropriation for expenses that happened in 2023 now. But then down here, it says, I saw something with regard to 2024, but then it says the percent of the total operating appropriations in the budget for 2023 is $708,075. So my first question is this what is this $75,000 for?
All right, if
Am
I
I,
can.
I got a pen.
It basically, let me answer it straightforward, simple, easy.
Uh-huh.
The 75,000 is to do the reclassification for the solar field, for the subdivision. So that funding wasn't planned at the time of the budget. We put it in now, the amount will be paid off in next year's budget,
But why is that going into the planning board?
because it has to be done by subdivision. Planning board's the only one that deals with subdivision.
So this $75,000 is what is paying for our application in front of the planning board to get the subdivision.
Classification.
Beautiful, okay.
Makes sense.
Okay, and what is, it says, 3% of the total operating appropriations in the budget for 2023. So this is not the planning board budget, it's
This
nothing to
would
do
be
with
the,
that.
right, this is the amount that we would be allowed to do an emergency up to.
Got it, okay, perfect.
If we needed that.
Okay, makes sense to me now, I have no more questions.
Any other questions on 9-1?
Yes, I have a question on that. So Sam, this is probably a separate topic, but the number is similar. So I know at the planning board meeting last week, it was discussed by Chairwoman Luciano and others that there was more funds being made available for the site, subcommittee to look at the zoning and the,
Right, they just haven't given me a number yet.
Is this
So-
on this ordinance? Is this
Okay.
on this?
No.
well, it's very closely related, because I think the number was the same, and I thought that was this,
Don't we have to
actually.
approve this before these things are done? Don't we have to approve it if it's more than what's in the budget?
It would be a resolution that would come forward.
Yeah.
At that time. They've requested that they would need more funding for again, that would probably be more or less, could be classified as a revision of master plan,
Mhm.
which could be classified as a 5-year special emergency. So the funding for that could be spread over a
What?
5-year period.
Yeah, that was my understanding, that it was going to be made available for this work coming up, but it would also be master plan related, and anything that wasn't used would be part of that emergency funds to be
So-
used for the master
Who is
plan.
deciding where these, where are these resolutions, where money is being?
Well, the
No, these are-
resolutions won't be coming from anyone except for me when I'm satisfied that
Right.
they're properly done.
So it's not here, is what I'm
Right.
saying.
And I need to receive the amounts with a good estimate. Again, finance-wise, I'm
Right.
still steering the ship.
No, there's new business to talk about this stuff, but we're supposed to be doing resolutions right now.
Whatever, the question was, because it's the same dollar amount that came up last week, I wanted a clarification on that. That was the point of the question. Thank you, Sam.
Yep.
All right, any other questions on 9-1? All right, all those in favor of approving 9-1, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? 9-1 is approved. May I have a motion to approve Resolution 9-2?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Any comments or questions on 9-2?
Yes, so there is some wording here that seems inconsistent with what was discussed earlier. I'm not sure if it's a typo or if I'm not reading it correctly. So on the fifth whereas, it says that East Coast is going to deed 0.587 acres of Lot 5 to Lot 4. And then also later on in that, it says, in exchange for conveyance of the same size property from Lot 4. And then it has, and the undeveloped sustainable way to East Coast. So unless I'm misinterpreting, it sounds like there's going to be a swap of property, about half an acre, right, 587. And then also, there's going to be land conveyed from Lot 4, which is DPW, to East Coast. that seems counterintuitive from what we talked about earlier, that Lot 5 was going to be a net zero East Coast, and Lot 4 was going to be increasing a little bit. It just, maybe it's just the language, but it just seems that it's inconsistent.
I believe it's correct. Most of it comes from Sustainable Way. But there's a little piece that comes from Lot 4 that's going over to Lot 5. And if you look down in this little triangular piece, there's a little piece there that goes from Lot 4 to 5. When that's added with Sustainable Way, it adds up to the 0.587 acres, which makes Lot 5 net zero. Does that make sense?
I think it's just wording, so it says conveyance of the same size property from these two pieces, lot 4 and.
And the undeveloped Sustainable Way. The undeveloped Sustainable Way is a right-of-way, and that's being.
Oh, I see. So with this another way to say this would be, in exchange for a conveyance of the same size of property comprised of land from Lot 4 and Sustainable Way, right? If they're not additive, it's saying that those two together are going to make up the 587?
Correct.
Okay, I think it was a language thing.
I'll ask our legal counsel, is there a need to clarify the language, or is it not required for this as the resolution? That the language will be very clear when you get the deed settled?
No, I don't see a need for it. I think explained on the record is adequate.
So it's comprised, the 587 is going to be made up of a combination of property from Lot 4 and Sustainable
Based on
Way?
The size of the property from Lot 4 and the undeveloped Sustainable Way.
Okay. Do you see how this can be seen also as sequential, that?
Yeah.
It's going to be the same size property and also the undeveloped Sustainable Way property?
So do you want to suggest a language change? And that going to change the, would that be materially changing them?
Which, that's what we get from Lot 4, which shall include the undeveloped Sustainable Way.
So after the word lot 4, we're going to say, which shall include the undeveloped Sustainable Way. Is that okay?
Can you say it again, please?
So after the phrase, from the property from lot 4, we're going to add the words, which shall include, let's replace the word and, the undeveloped Sustainable Way.
In exchange for a conveyance of the same size property from Lot 4, which shall include the undeveloped Sustainable Way to
Correct.
East Coast.
Is that okay? Council.
I don't think that's
Tony?
accurate.
What do you got?
Yeah.
Sarah, I think the comment was exchange for conveyance of the same size of property. I think really is comprised from Lot 4 and the undeveloped Sustainable Way. I like that comprised for the part of it's basically taking a little piece of Lot 4 and undeveloped Sustainable Way to make up that.
Yeah, so only
For a conveyance of the same size of property from Lot 4?
comprised from lot 4 and the undeveloped Sustainable Way. So we're adding only one word to it. After the word property, we're putting in the word comprised.
It's comprised of a small little piece of Lot 4 and Sustainable Way, however you want to word that, but
Yeah.
that's basically what I'm trying to state. Comes out that the little piece from Lot 4 is 0.021 acres. It's a very small little sliver.
Almost all of it's from the Sustainable Way.
It's almost all from Sustainable Way except for that little piece. I believe that little piece is so they can make an equal land swap. Okay.
Okay, so in exchange for a conveyance of the same size of property comprised from Lot 4 and the undeveloped Sustainable Way to East Coast.
From a small section of lot 4, because we're not going to convey you the whole lot 4.
From a portion of Lot 4?
Small section of lot 4. Small portion of lot 4.
That's 6 to 1, half dozen, I guess.
Okay, are we good with that language? Councilman Benet?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, so I'll make a motion to add the language after the word property comprised from a small portion of lot 4, proportion of, and then the rest lot 4 in the undeveloped sustainable way. May I have a second?
Second.
Can I, so can we approve, all those in favor of making that small change, say aye? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now can we approve the resolution 9-2 with the amendment? May I have a motion to approve 9-2 with the amendment?
Make a motion to approve 9-2 as amended.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right, the motion is, 9-2 is approved as amended. May I have a motion to approve resolutions 9-3, 9-4, and 9-5 together?
I'll make a motion to approve 9-3, 9-4, and 9-5 together.
Thank you. May I have a second? I'm sorry? Okay, may I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I have a question on 9-3. I'm assuming 9 and 9-6. I'm assuming 9-6 is the property that we've already been in this agreement with, the
Well,
gentleman that's been kind of
this is-
property across the street.
This is only 9, 3, and 4, and 5. We haven't, 6 and 7, we had separate
All
questions.
right, so 3 is, why are we doing a contract for special counsel for only 3 months?
This is because the council, the attorney that we were using from that actually changed the name of the firm, so it's more or less just to confirm
Okay.
the
Oh.
name of the firm.
And that's Ed Buzak, who has acted as conflict counsel in the past for the township.
Okay, I just couldn't figure out why we were only doing it for 3 months, but now it makes sense. Okay.
Any other questions on 9, 3, 4, or 5? All right, all those in favor of approving resolutions 9-3, 9-4, and 9-5, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Right, those 3 are approved. May I have a motion to approve resolution 9-6?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Any questions on 9-6?
I do. I know it's a small amount. I believe it's for lawn mowing. I looked up, saw where the property was. Just curiosity, why doesn't the town do it? Why don't we do it ourselves? And why is this a unique kind of one-off arrangement for this one piece of property?
I think it requires hay, right?
Yeah.
I don't have hay baling.
This is actually, yes, this is a 12-acre hay field, and we actually get money back from the person that takes the hay. We put it out, he's the only one that has ever applied to mow the hay field, and the field is over on 94 across from the auditorium.
So we pay him, he mows it, we get the hay?
No.
No, he
Sell
sells
it.
the hay. He gives us part of it.
He gives us $1,000 for the hay he takes off the field, which it's not fertilized, it's nothing else, it's just basically hay they use for bedding.
So we could cut it ourselves. We just don't have hay baling equipment. So that's why we work with Mr. Che.
So we don't make money, we're paying him money to do this, right?
No,
Oh, we're making money.
He's paying us. He's paying us for the hay that he takes off the property.
He cuts our hay for us and sells it for $3,000 and gives us $1,000, whatever the numbers are.
And we've put it out several times to different farmers in the area. He is the only one that really applies to go and take that hay. He's within close
Yeah, you gotta
proximity
bring your equipment out there and stuff.
of,
It's a no-brainer.
Okay, any other, Councilman Blemedy, are you okay with 9-6?
Yeah, that's fine.
Any other questions on 9-6? May I have a motion to approve resolution? I'm sorry, we just did, all those in favor of approving 9-6, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, 9-6 is approved. May I have a motion to approve resolution 9-7?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second? Any comments or questions on 9-7?
Yeah, for 9-7, Sam, can you just give us some context, explain exactly what's happening here? I mean, to me, it looks like
these are.
we're refinancing
temporary-
and packaging, but
These are temporary notes that we take out each year. They're called bond anticipation notes. We do this in lieu of doing permanent bonding. Most of these notes will be paid off in the 10-year time frame that they allow us not to go out to permanent bonding. Basically, that's it. It's a combination of general capital notes, water capital, and sewer.
So the money derived from these bonds are used for,
For capital projects such as water tanks, let's see, what's some of the big ones there? Some of them were some DPW projects, from years ago, and it's just being paid off over a 10-year period. Primarily, it was,
sheds on here.
No, the painting of water tanks, the construction of the sewer system or upgrades to the sewer system.
Oh, that's right, that's what that is.
So there's nothing new, just to be clear for everyone, the public. It's just we're refinancing, we're just packaging them and
Right.
extending them another year.
It has an option. I mean, if the market were to do wonderful, spectacular things, we may look at going out and doing permanent bonding, and right now it's not doing that.
This is just rolling over what we've already got.
Yes, and most of it will be paid off in a couple of years.
So nothing new, no new projects here, nothing, just existing stuff we're rolling over.
Right. I mean, basically, most of our bond issues will be paid off within a 2 to 3 year period. We'll be debt-free, at least on the current fund side.
Okay. Any other questions on 9-7? All those in favor of approving resolution 9-7, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Right, resolution 9-7 is passed. I'm going to lump together vote on 9-8 through 9-12. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
May I have a roll call vote, please, on resolutions 9-8, 9-9, 9-10, 9-11, and 9-12?
I'll make a motion that we approve them.
I'm sorry, before we do that, yes, motion to approve. May I have a second, please?
second.
Any comments or questions? Thanks for catching that. Roll call vote, please, on those.
Councilman Blumetti,
Yes.
Councilman Hertzberg,
Abstain.
Deputy Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Quinn,
Abstain?
Mayor Chiarella.
Yes, the resolutions are passed. That is it for the resolutions. Council liaison updates. I'll start with Councilman Blumetti.
So the Environmental Commission, as you've heard, we had a guest speaker, Barbara Davis, talked about open space planning. Secondly, the commission reviewed Planning Board Application 707, which is for number 1 North Village Boulevard, which is reportedly the last lot of that development, meaning North Village, that's not built out yet. That's it for this commission. Just a side note related to the planning board in a sense. As I mentioned in the past, the New Jersey Plan Endorsement Advisory Committee, the PIAC, the first meeting is coming up now before we will meet here again. It's on Monday, September 11th. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Clark.
Sure. We now, I haven't scheduled it yet, but the Revolution NJ, I'm the council liaison along with Councilman Blumetti. We had a thank you to Tap into Sparta for publishing, the call out to get people to apply. I think when that happened, we got a lot more people to apply. And I think right now is we have 6 who have been appointed. We have 1 who has applied but not yet been appointed. So that would bring us up to 7 if we do approve that person. And so once we are fully constituted, we will be looking to meet probably after the summer's over and people's schedules have calmed down. And I'll have more to report once we get, properly, when we meet and are properly constituted. And that is all for me.
And so to build on that, we did invite, so that we have 2 council representatives, you and Councilman Blumetti. The VFW representative is Peter Litchfield. The Board of Education representatives haven't been named yet. We'll have a meeting with them again soon. I also have we have 2 Sparta Historical Society representatives that have not yet been named, so those are 2 pending candidates as well. And then the 5 members that you mentioned, plus a 1-person candidate that has also applied but has not been named, has not been appointed yet. Do you want to appoint that person now, or do you want to wait until the committee is a full, or do you think the committee is too full?
If I could move to appoint Lynn Leitner to the Revolution NJ committee.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion or comment?
Just to make sure there's a form, right? There's a volunteer form?
Yeah, she applied, she followed the proper process to apply.
We should have all gotten, I
Yeah.
think, the email from that.
Great.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, so welcome Lynn Leitner to the committee. All right, Councilman Hertzberg, I'm sorry.
Just a comment on the Historical Society. So there is, Marianne Francisco has been in touch via email, and then we're just waiting for a second name, so I believe it's going to be her and someone else, but
Oh, good,
I'll follow up on that.
thank you. All right, nothing, okay. Councilwoman Quinn?
Nope.
Okay, as for myself, the only thing that I had here was just discussed, although I was at the concert on Friday, and it was a good time. I think we have one more left in the year next Friday. We have no unfinished business that has been carried over. We had one, we adjudicated it, that was the food trucks. Any new business, which is what we used to call old business and new business, we're just wrapping it up as business. So please start off.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I don't hear what side you want to start.
No, with you, please.
So I'm following up on the issue with Lewis Lane. So we had some discussions about Lewis Lane is the connection point between Sparta Avenue and the other side of the street, Lewis Lane, which is over by where Alpine Creamery is there. So I know we looked at I asked about, could we get one of those blinking lights for that place? It came back, we probably couldn't do that, but I just wanted to ask, maybe could we get some brighter signs, or maybe some different signage, or maybe just get it painted a different color? It's just something to make it stick out a little bit. I noticed when I was going up the road, I understand where the high school is and the church is, those are very expensive. As the ones we have out here, they're too expensive, it's too much, but I think we could maybe at the very least just install some kind of new signage there, just to bring attention to it. It's a busy road, I don't think people are paying attention. We do have a lot of kids, especially in the summer, that are running back and forth in between, maybe the basketball courts or what's going on in Ungerman or wherever, and they're running back and forth in between. So I would just I know we can't do the big thing we said, but maybe we can come up with an alternative.
I
just
did
putting
speak
up
to
some
our
new
traffic
signage.
bureau about it already. So
yeah.
let me follow up with them tomorrow.
Perfect.
Yep.
Just simple. I mean, if we could just get the new signs seem to be like a green, like a very bright green, rather than like the yellow even. So maybe something just as simple as that to make it stand out a little more. The other thing was at the last meeting, at the very, very end, I mentioned that back in 2020, we had been having conversations about the possibility of adding or looking at adding emergency service satellite station for police, a fire truck, maybe an ambulance, equipment willing, and just really looking at the feasibility of that. And when I left, I know it was late. I don't know if it really came across properly what the content or context was, but it was basically, if you could think of like a pole barn on property over there, and there's different reasons for it. So in other words, we have a lot of people that live over there. We have a lot of people now. We have a lot more people that are in that area. We want to be able to get emergency personnel and equipment to those people faster. So one of the things was, not only do we want to service the residents in a better way and look at the feasibility of that, maybe it would matter, maybe not. The other thing is getting people to the apparatus quicker. So in other words, if you live over on that side of town, and you can get to a truck and get right to something, God forbid, over by Pegasus or, any of those roads, rather than having to go all the way back to the middle of town, get a truck and then go all the way back out there. So it's just a feasibility study, like just looking at, hey, what could the potential from a public safety perspective be? And so I just wanted to clarify what I had said, because I know it was late and I don't even know if I was speaking coherently at the end of that meeting. I think it was like 11:30. So I'd just like to sit down with you guys and maybe talk about what we talked about in 2020. And then maybe you guys could just look at it and get back to us and let us know what you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We could set up a meeting. I think definitely the fire department would have to be involved. I mean, on a
The
police end, we're responding now. I mean, we're 24/7, we're manned. I think that would be more of the fire department on that end as far as equipment. And I know I spoke to Sam about it a little bit after you mentioned it, and some of the thoughts would be something about maybe putting something out at the DPW, a truck out there. So, but definitely we could set up a meeting and go over everything, so.
Thank you. I just really wanted to clarify it, because again, I just wanted to make sure. Okay. And you guys had a meeting, Jeff, right, with members of Lake Mohawk? Did you guys have that meeting last week? I know I couldn't
Yes.
come. Okay, so everything's taken care of there?
I asked them to prioritize their needs, and get everything listed together so we could better, kind of tackle, because there was a lot all at once.
Okay.
I know that there's already some improvements that are being made on East Shore Trail with the county. And a lot of the things that they're talking about, that committee is, within the reservation, which Lake Mohawk should be a part of those conversations too.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you for also taking the time to,
Mhm.
and I apologize that I couldn't come to the meeting.
No problem.
That's it for me.
Can I ask what that's in reference to, the Lake Mohawk issues?
Crosswalks, pedestrian, traffic, speeding, stop signs, one-way roads. She's still here. So they're all really traffic issues. And there was kind of a lot, but they were going all over the place. So I respectfully asked them to prioritize and list it out so we could really take a look at what we need. Bottom line is, we patrol those roads every day. And we're out there and we enforce. And whatever other issues that come up by them with pedestrian traffic, we'll tackle when they could bring some more information to me.
Are they coming forward as just
Committee.
private citizens, or are they a committee for Lake Mohawk? Or, I mean, we've met with them once before.
They're part of
Is
a,
it formal now?
they're part of a committee
Okay,
with Lake Mohawk.
okay. That's it for me.
All right, thanks. Councilman Hertzberg?
I have none.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Clark?
No.
Councilman Blumetti?
Yeah, I have one new item. I'll make it quick because we have time. It pertains to the winter, but I want to get it out there now because it's a suggestion from a resident from a few environmental commission meetings ago, and I've been putting it off because it's been getting late at these meetings. So I just, out of respect for him, I wanted to mention it's an interesting suggestion. So, a local resident during an environmental commission meeting, he was talking about the fact that Sparta Glen Park is the only place you can bring a dog. And in the winter, we typically plow and salt up past the first parking lot, up to the second parking lot, and he was saying up towards the pavilion, it's plowed and salted. And his concern was that people want to walk dogs in the winter, the salt is damaging to them, to their paws and everything, and also it's not good for the stream. His suggestion, and maybe we can consider it makes sense in a way, is that the town during the winter would plow and salt up to through the first parking lot, up to that gate, and keep the gate closed, so people can't park up in the second lot. If they want to go and walk, they can, but plow and salt up through the end of the first parking lot and let the cars park down there. In the winter, people are going there in the winter with their pets. So it's something we have time to consider, but I wanted to get it out there to see if it's, sure there's pros and cons.
I got that email this morning.
Oh.
I talked to my snow supervisor, and I also talked to Gene Montemorano of the parks. I evaluated the nice little diagram that Mr. Murphy, I think he was the one who did it. I didn't see a problem with the suggestion. I told him I was fine with it. We could close the gate there. The lower parking lot would be used for the parking, and they could have the rest of the Glen to walk unplowed or whatever. But I replied in the email that I didn't see an issue with it at all. So
Oh, great.
I think we were able to take care of it.
Okay, excellent. Thanks.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I lied to you.
Go ahead,
I
please.
have two more things. So I just want to, on behalf of the New Jersey League of Municipalities, I just want to convey the very sad news that past President Jim Perry passed away. He had been the president in 2020, did a lot of work and really dedicated himself to the league. So I just want to extend our condolences to his family. and services will be announced at a later time.
He was from
Also-
Warren County, wasn't he? He was a local guy, yeah.
And he more recently had moved to Florida.
Okay.
So when he passed away, he was actually in Florida. But the other thing is, it was an honor to attend the the grand opening of their new facility. If you haven't seen it, it's really quite amazing. I know some members of town were there. Really, they do an amazing job.
Pretty nice for a dog.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was amazing
Really,
complex.
the quality, the time and the quality and the care and the commitment that they have in that facility is just absolutely amazing. So I just wanted to mention, it was a real honor to be there and to be able to see it. I missed the tour, but I'm going on another one. There's another tour coming up. I had a conflict with work, unfortunately, but I did get a chance to get up there to see the facility itself. It's really quite amazing what they've done. If you haven't had a chance to go up there, take a look at it because it's unbelievably impressive.
When is your tour, if you don't mind me?
What's that?
When is the tour?
I don't know yet. They're
Okay.
gonna let me know. They're gonna send me an email, so I'll send it to
Please
you.
do, thank you. Because I missed it. I was in New York City that
Yeah,
day, actually.
It's just the level of commitment and caring and dedication to what's going on up there and the way that place is run is really, it's amazing. So I wanted to mention that as well. Now I'm really done. I'm
Okay,
actually
thanks.
really, really done.
Cool. I got 4 quick things. Number one, I'm still angry with myself for blanking on Lori Davina's name earlier when I introduced her to accept the proclamation. So I apologize to her if she's watching on TV. Number two, I was both dreading and really looking forward to our food truck discussion. I knew it was going to be complicated and hairy, but at the same time, these policy discussions are just why I got into this in the first place, to explore all these things, and it's fun to have this discussion with everybody. But it would be more fun if it weren't 11 o'clock at night having the discussion. But number three, I'd like to make a motion that we put on a future resolution to fly the flag of the Sparta, commemorative flag of the Sparta Fire Department on their 100th anniversary on November 4th. May I have a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of putting it on the resolution for the next meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstain? Okay, thank you. And lastly, I think tomorrow we'll have a new police chief, is what I heard.
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that, or?
Yes, so we have a 11-year-old girl named Cheryl Walsh who's going to be coming in. She is going to be police chief for a day. She's
Excellent.
going to come in. She's going to get sworn in by our mayor. She's going to do a roll call. She's going to do a tour of our facility here. She's going to go for a little ride along, have lunch, most importantly, and just kind of see what the everyday life is of a police officer, and more importantly, a police chief. So we're looking forward to that. It's just something that we decided to do as an agency that came up. And next year, we want to continue this annually and make it more so like a contest, as you have to have an application, maybe an essay or something to write, and some volunteer experience or something like that. So it's the first year that we're doing it. We're excited about it. She's got a uniform. Her mom's very excited about it and thankful for the fact that we're doing it. So maybe Jenny, come by and take some pictures. Yep. And that's it. It's gonna be a good day.
All right, thanks. That's all I have. Open up to the public for any comments before we adjourn.
Sorry, just something I've been hanging on to. Jenny Derrick's happened to Sparta feasibility study. This has been hanging out since November 2021. We paid for it. We've paid 2 separate sets of invoices for $15,000 total. 2 separate sets of studies, it appears to be, by the same firm. And I was able to get the bills, but I'm being told through my OPA request, I'm not able to get the study itself because it has not yet been accepted. This happened in 2021. It actually happened in December of 2021 and was billed, and then happened again in 2022 and was billed.
So I can say that all those things are correct, that it's still in draft form, hasn't been corrected, but we are taking steps to, hasn't been accepted, but we are taking steps to formally accept it. And I don't know if Sam, if you want to expound on our next steps there, I can if you want to, but, or,
Yeah, we're still just trying to get all of the facts together with both the studies so that we can make sure that they are correct and.
This is 2021.
so we're taking steps.
Two times. We did this study 2 times. We paid for it twice, and we're still waiting to figure it out.
I don't think we did the study 2 times. I
Well,
don't know what
there's 2 sets of bills.
it might have been a down payment or an initial payment and a final payment.
It enumerates almost the same work being done twice.
I can't speak to the 2 bills, but I can tell you that we have for a while that it was hard to locate the study, and we did find it, and we're at the point now where we're assessing where we are with the study or where it was left off, and that assessment isn't complete yet. But when it is complete, that will be, I guess, made public because that'll be a complete study in and of itself, and whether or not the assessment of the study is made public, I think, has to do with first accepting a summary of where that was left off. So I guess my point is that we're taking steps to finish to close the books on that.
I mean, they're reviewing at the planning board, they're reviewing, as you know, Dean, all the different subdivision, or the different divisions within the ED zone. This smacks right in top of the ED zone. I would think it would have impact on what they're doing with their work that we're spending all the money to do with the professionals to
It is
help out
related,
with that, and eventually the master plan, hopefully, and it's been sitting out there for 2 years.
Do we have a timeline on when we think that summary might be, just roughly? Is it a month or 2, a week or 2? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just wanted to thank Chief McCarrick and your department for putting that four-way intersection in on East Shore Trail and West Shore Trail. It's amazing, more safe. I mean,
It definitely needs.
you're not to close your eyes and say, okay, I'm going to try to make it this time.
That's tough.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? All right, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Have a pleasant rest of your evening.